Chapter 423. Boom. With the opening of the stone door and the formation of the closed room, a group of familiar figures came into Qin Daoxuan's eyes. Dao Xian. Qin Lang. Patriarch. Quiet outside. Qin Xinhe, Luo Li, Qin Daolian, Qin Daochu, Qin Fuxing. All stood not far away with surprise in their eyes. Qin Daoxuan's eyes swept across everyone. Uncle 13 liar. In front of Qin Daoxuan Fai, he first said hello to the 13th uncle Qin Xinhe, then nodded to Luo Li and finally, looked at the eager-eyed Qin clan. Dao Xian, you have your defense? Qin Xian's cultivation was only at the foundation stage, and he could not see any change in Qin Daoxuan's cultivation. In fact, not only Qin Xinhe but the Qin clan members present, even Qin Fuxing, who had the highest cultivation base, had only reached the late stage of Zifu, and they could not see the change in Qin Daoxuan's cultivation base. Everyone just felt that Qin Daoxuan's breath was very different from before. But they couldn't see the other party's cultivation. Looking at the eager eyes of everyone, Qin Daoxian nodded and smiled. Success. It really worked. Qin Daochu stepped forward excitedly. So, my Qin family is also the Yuanying family? You boy, Qin Daoxian shook his head with a smile. Yes, from now on my Qin family will be a veritable Yuanying family. Ah. Hearing this, the Qin clan members present could no longer restrain their excitement, and they all burst into laughter. Because they know that only the stronger the patriarch's strength, the more stable the Qin family's position will be. People of insight in the Qin family can see that since the Qin Yuan sword sect recovered from the Yun kingdom, the Qin family's position is somewhat dangerous. Because of the strength of the Qin family, the dominance of Qin Yuan Jianzong and Wang Xinghai has been threatened. However, apart from Qin Daoxian, the Qin family couldn't come up with a second person who could suppress the ethnic movement. Even Qin Fuxing, the leader of the Zifu Tianjiao list, who is now known as Wang Xinghai, is still far behind the patriarch Qin Daoxian. In the eyes of the real powerhouses of Wang Xinghai, those who can make Qin Yuan Jianzong take a fancy to, at least have the strength of the top true monarch. Ordinary Yuanying monks are not in the eyes of Qin Yuan Jianzong. After all, in the battle with Shenqing Dao League, Qin Yuan Jianzong dispatched hundreds of Yuanying Jinjuan ordinary Yuanying monks. In the eyes of Qin Yuan Jianzong, it really is nothing. Quiet outside. The crowd laughed for a while and regained their composure. Qin Daolian took a step forward and said with a smile, Patriarch, you succeeded in conceiving a baby. Do you need to hold a nascent soul ceremony to inform Wang Xinghai? Normally, when a monk breaks through to the nascent soul stage, he must hold a nascent soul celebration. First, it is an opportunity to show strength to the outside world. Second, it is also a chance to make money. After all, the cultivators who came to participate in the nascent soul celebration must have a high status. The gifts given by these people add up to a large sum of money. Of course, for the Qin family, making money is nothing. With the wealth accumulated by the Qin family, I can't despise this small wealth. As for showing strength to the outside world, Qin Daolian must ask Qin Daoxian for instructions. After all, as the acting patriarch of the Qin family, she vaguely knew the embarrassing status of the Qin family, and rashly showed her strength to the outside world, which might cause misunderstandings from Qin Yuan Jianzong. Qin Daoxian could see Qin Daolian's concerns at a glance. He smiled and said, The nascent soul celebration is unnecessary, but today the core children of my Qin family are all there, and I do have something to announce. Hearing this, everyone was in awe. Qin Daoxian continued, The Qin family will form a new alliance with Qin Yuan Jianzong. Not only that, but I also want to marry the concubine Qin Shui. What? Patriarch, do you want to become a Taoist partner with the sect master of Qin Yuan sword sect? Qin Daoxuan's words were like a thunderbolt on the ground, and they blew everyone dumbfounded. If this sentence is said by outsiders, they will only think that the other party has hysteria and is a little confused. But this was announced by their godlike patriarch himself. In other words, their patriarch, Qin Daoxian, really wanted to become a Taoist companion with Qin Shui, the concubine of the Qin Yuan sword sect. Originally guessed by the senior officials of the Qin family, the worry that the Qin family might fight against Qin Yuan Jianzong disappeared completely. The patriarch of the Qin family is about to marry the suzerain of the Qin Yuan sword sect, and the two families are about to become a family, so what else is there to fight? Although concubine Chengshi's status in Qin Yuan sword sect, compared with Qin Daoxuan's status in the Qin family, there is still a gap. But since Fei Qinshui completely eradicated Yin's lineage, he has firmly controlled the power of Qin Yuan Jianzong. If the two really combine, the Qin family and the Qin Yuan Jianzong alliance are definitely not false. Qin Daolian had been hinted by Luo Li before, but she was not very surprised. Qin Daochu was very nervous. he was the first to react and said quickly, "Patriarch, so, isn't my Qin family going to become the ruler of Wanxinghai and Izumo? The exact division of power is still up for debate, but my Qin family will indeed become the new ruler of Wanxinghai." Qin Daoxian nodded, believing Qin Daocha's statement. As for Qin Xinha on the side, he just felt dizzy. He never thought that the Qinyuan sword sect, which used to be like a moat to him, would be mastered by the Qin family. Qin Xinha is not stupid. He can see that since the Qinyuan sword sect master agreed to marry Qin Daoxian, it means that the other party is willing to share the ruling authority of Wanxinghai and Izumo with the Qin family. Since the Qin family and Qinyuan Jianzong formed an alliance, there must be an alliance leader. In all likelihood, his nephew Qin Daoxian held this position. What is a step to the sky? This is. Originally, with the strength of the Qin family, it would take hundreds of years to develop to the scale of the Qinyuan sword sect, even with the support of Qin Daoxian and the strong industrial strength of the Qin family. But now, directly saving hundreds of years of development, Wanxinghai's authority is within easy reach of the Qin family. The patriarch broke through to the Yuanying period, and was about to marry his concubine Qin Shui. The Qin family was about to form an alliance with Qinyuan Jianzong. This was a double happiness for the Qin clan present. Just when everyone was excited, Qin Daoxian coughed, interrupting the excited clan, and instructed, "Although I have already discussed the matter with the Qinyuan sword sect alliance, the concubine sect master and I have already discussed it, but everyone must be prepared to deal with some opposition." At this time, Qin Fuxing stood up and cupped his hands. "Don't worry, Patriarch, if anyone in Wanxinghai dares to talk nonsense about this matter, my Qin family will not forgive me lightly." Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Fuxing, who had broken through to the late stage of Zifu, and nodded. Chatted with the crowd again. Seeing that Qin Daoxian looked a little tired, everyone said goodbye. Watching everyone leave, Qin Daoxian walked with Luo Li in the immortal mansion. Although the two were walking, Qin Daoxuan's thoughts drifted to somewhere. Qin Fuxing was already the most cultivated among the Qin family's many cultivators, but he had only reached the late period of Zifu. Even if Qin Fuxing's strength is comparable to that of ordinary Jindan cultivators by virtue of the Qin family's power spirit armor and other magical weapons, compared with the power of Qinyuan Jianzong, the strength of the rest of the Qin family is still too weak. Now that the Qin family wants to form an alliance with the Qinyuan sword sect, they will inevitably face the division of power within the alliance. In the world of immortality, strength is always the reference standard for division of power. Even if Qin Daoxian became the leader of this new alliance, he would not be able to abruptly promote a cultivator of the Qin family's Zifu to serve as the immediate boss of a Qinyuan Jianzong Jindan Jinren. This will inevitably lead to the instability of the governing structure of the alliance. Qin Daoxian now also faintly sees that Fei Qinshui agrees with the Qin family in the Qinyuan sword sect alliance, and in all likelihood has this kind of mind. Everything in the Qin family is pinned on him. However, the rest of the Qin family are not strong. Even if the Qin family and Qinyuan Jianzong form an alliance, the ordinary members of the Qin family can only become the middle and lower ranks of this new alliance at most. The high-level position of the alliance is bound to be occupied by the Yuanying true monarchs of Qinyuan Jianzong. And facing this situation, Qin Daoxian had nothing to say. In addition, with the population base of Qinyuan Jianzong far exceeding that of the Qin family, the alliance between the Qin family and Qinyuan Jianzong will only be merged by Qinyuan Jianzong. In this way, Qinyuan Jianzong not only solved the Qin family's confidence troubles without blood, but also obtained Qin Daoxian, a gifted evildoer. Kill two birds with one stone. Concubine Chengshi's move is a naked conspiracy. Even if Qin Daoxian saw it, he had to agree. Because they did not agree, Qinyuan Jianzong and the Qin family would have a fight. Although Qin Daoxian believed that the Qin family would not lose, what he said would not be lost was only because he himself would not lose. As for the rest of the Qin family, I am afraid that no one can survive the offensive of the Qinyuan sword sect. This is also one of the fundamental reasons why Qin Daoxian finally agreed to concubine Qinshui. As for cooperation with Yi Yin, Qin Daoxian did not think about it, but it was more troublesome in practice. Yi Yin is just a representative of many immortal clans in Wanxinghai. Once the Qin family joins Yi Yin's family, they will face more open and secret battles. How many immortal families are there in Wanxinghai? Countless. Even the Guangyuanying family has more than a dozen families. With so many immortal cultivating families, even if the Qin family is the best in strength, how can they unite them? In addition, Qin Daoxian did not agree with the Xiuxin family represented by Yi Yin from the bottom of his heart, and naturally he would not choose to cooperate with them. At this moment, Qin Daoxian understood that the alliance between the Qin family and Qinyuan sword sect was only the first step. The second step is to support the children of the Qin family and occupy the highest position in this alliance as much as possible, at least, to be able to compete with the original faction of Qin Yuan Jin's own concubine Snow. Thinking of her, Qin Daoxuan's feelings are very complicated. Because the other party, like him, did not want the Qin family to go to war with Qin Yuan Jinzong, and did not want to see the living beings of Wan Xinghai go to pieces. Fei Chengshi's strength is not only in her strength, but her wrist is the strongest among the women Qin Daoxian has ever seen. Even Qin Daolian, who has been the acting patriarch of the Qin family for many years, is very immature compared to him. Qin Daolian may be quite strong in handling internal affairs, but when it comes to long-term vision and political skills, he is still far behind Fei Qinxue. As for cultivation talent and strength, Qin Daolian didn't know how much worse than Fei Qinxue. No wonder Fei Qinxue was not worried about Qin Daoxuan's companion Luo Li. Perhaps in her eyes she had never regarded Luo Li as an opponent at all. With a decision in mind, the rest is action. The Qin family cultivator is not strong enough and can be strengthened from two aspects. One is to strengthen one's own strength, and the other is to strengthen the comprehensive strength of the Qin family cultivator through foreign objects. There are many ways to strengthen one's own strength, such as improving body, qi and spiritual cultivation, improving the realm of the Tao, practicing powerful secrets, magical powers and so on. As for strengthening the comprehensive strength of the Qin family's children through foreign objects, there are more ways such as magic tools, spirit talismans, puppets, raising spirit insects, imperial beasts and so on. Of course, Qin Daoxuan's first choice is to strengthen the strength of the Qin family's children, or to quickly improve the Qin family's children's cultivation. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but glanced at the two remaining Saint Yuan fruits in the storage ring. Regarding the rapid improvement of cultivation, the only treasures Qin Daoxian saw were the essence of vitality and the fruit of holy essence. And compared with the essence of vitality, the effect of Xinyuan fruit is much better. The only pity is that the treasure of Xinyuan fruit is too precious according to legend. Only the Taiyin sect has fruit trees that can continuously produce Xinyuan fruit. If other cultivators want to obtain this treasure, they can only go to the battlefield outside the two realms and make military exploits. Once the cultivator has made enough military exploits, he can use the military exploits to exchange various resources and treasures in Tianzuan City, including the treasure such as Xinyuan fruit. Shenfu Forest Garden. Luo Li walked quietly beside Qin Daoxian. Liar. Suddenly Qin Daoxian called out softly. Okay? Luo Li stopped and looked up at Ai Lang beside him. I just found out today that my Qin family cultivator's strength is still too weak. Hearing this, Luo Li hurriedly comforted, Qin Lang must not say that. It has only been less than 100 years since the rise of the Qin family. Apart from you, the strongest of the family cultivators have already reached the late stage of Zifu, and the speed is not slow. It's not slow, but I can't wait. Can't wait. Luo Li was a little puzzled. Qin Daoxian expressed his concerns. You mean once the Qin family forms an alliance with Qin Yuan Jianzong, they will be divided and merged by Qin Yuan Jianzong? That's right. Apart from me, the most powerful members of the Qin family are only in the late period of Zifu. With such strength, how can they occupy a high position in this new alliance? Once the children of the Qin family cannot occupy a high position, the resources of the alliance will definitely not be tilted towards the children of the Qin family. If things go on like this, after hundreds of thousands of years, my Qin family will only become ordinary members of this new alliance, not its controllers. Hearing this, Luo Li stopped. Qin Lang, you are wrong. Luo Li shook his head. If I'm not mistaken, there must be one condition for marriage between the concubine and you, and that is to have offspring with you. How do you know? Luo Li didn't explain but smiled and said, the descendants you have with your concubine will be in charge of this alliance in the future. What you said just now is obviously just because you don't believe in concubine, and it's because she doesn't know. Otherwise it is uncertain how sad it will be. Seeing Qin Daoxian frowning, Luo Li looked at him and said softly, Qin Lang, you are here, the Qin family is here. I am here and the Qin family is here. Qin Daoxian said this sentence and suddenly became enlightened. That's right. As long as his strength keeps improving, who can suppress the children of the Qin family? All planning in the face of absolute strength, what does it count? He suddenly realized that he had misunderstood Fei Chengsu. The other party didn't set him up, and there was no conspiracy because Fei Qinshu knew in her heart that it was simply unrealistic to try to control a person like Qin Daoxian by means of a conspiracy. If you had to say that Fei Qinshu set a trap for him, then the only trap was to give birth to a child for him. As everyone knows, compared to Qin Daoxuan's fear of concubine Qinshu, concubine Qin Xue is the one who truly fears Qin Daoxian after all. In the face of a freak like Qin Daoxian, anyone who takes a closer look will be so frightened that he can't sleep at night. 7017K. Chapter 424. The Fairy City of Guang'an Prefecture. Young's Restaurant. On the second floor, scattered cultivators in twos and threes gathered at a table and sipped comfortably. What they talked about were the major events of Wanxinghai and even the entire Xianyun continent. Listening to their tone, people who didn't know, thought they were powerful and how accurate their analysis of the world situation was. Hey, did you hear that? At the wine table, a monk in a green robe with his head on his head stretched his neck and said to everyone mysteriously, the Chen family recently released news that Qin Daoxian, the head of the Chen family, is about to marry the sect master of Qianyuan sword sect. Is this true, fellow Taoist? At the wine table, the fellow drinkers were amazed and inexplicable. The two people mentioned by their companions are not trivial. The Chen family is the most popular family in Wanxinghai, and its patriarch Qin Daoxian is known as the first genius of Wanxinghai. Its name even surpassed Qin Zhan, the master of Jinhai Temple of Qianyuan Jianzhong. As for the other person, it is even more incredible, the sect master of Qianyuan sword sect, the actual ruler of Wanxinghai. The two became Taoist companions, which was a great event for Wanxinghai. Seeing that everyone didn't believe him, the green-robed loose cultivator looked a little unhappy, raised his glass and said with a displeased expression, "Do you believe me, Wu Mao, fellow Taoist Zhang?" Where, the cultivator surnamed Zhang hurriedly apologized, handing over his hands and saying, "In Guang'an Mansion, who does not know that your brother-in-law, Daoyu Zhang, is the third-order refiner of Guanhai Xianqing? How could we doubt you, Daoyu Zhang?" When the cultivator surnamed Zhang heard this flattery, his heart was instantly relieved, and then he remembered something and sighed, "Alas, although my brother-in-law is a famous person in Guanhai Xianqing, his life is a bit difficult now." "Oh? What's the reason? Isn't your brother-in-law a third-order refiner? Even if you can't stay in Guanhai Xianqing, you can still get along well when you go to other places?" "I am not sure as well," Sanxio surnamed Zhang shook his head. "Last time I went to Guanhai Xianqing to visit my sister, she didn't tell me the specific reason, but just said that my brother-in-law is always sighing and feeling low." Another monk at the wine table didn't care about it, he only cared about the news that Qin Daoxian and Fei Qinxue had become Taoist companions. Compared with this explosive news, the companion brother-in-law is not in a high mood, and it is nothing at all. "Don't talk about this, Zhang Daoyu, let's talk about Qin Zhenren's marriage to the Qianyuan sword sect master, right?" Sure enough, there is no essential difference between monks and mortals who like to listen to gossip. What's more, this is the super big gossip at the top of Wanxinghai. When they heard their companions drag the topic back, everyone agreed, "That's right, Daoyu Zhang, don't betray yourselves, let's talk about Patriarch Chen's marriage to the concubine and suzerain." "Extremely. Exactly." Hearing the urging of his companions, Taoist surnamed Zhang took it easy, cleared his throat, and began to talk about the news he heard in Guanhai Xianqing. A VIP box in the restaurant. At the door stood two monks in blue clothes and carrying long swords. Inside the box, a young and beautiful female cultivator was sitting opposite a handsome male cultivator. Through the window, Yang Gongwan looked at the bustling restaurant, turned her head and said with emotion, "Daoyu Zhou also heard about it?" Zhou Mubai retracted his gaze from the window, looked at Yang Gongwan and said, "I've heard of the story of Patriarch Chen's marriage to the concubine and the suzerain. I wonder what Zhou Daoyu thinks about this matter?" Zhou Mubai frowned, then smiled and said, "Patriarch Chen is the leader of my Zhangzhou colleagues. His marriage to the concubine suzerain will definitely boost my strength and prestige in Zhangzhou. Of course, I agree with such a happy event." Hearing these perfunctory words, Yang Gongwan said angrily, "Don't you think Qianyuan sword sect's attitude is a bit strange? The Chen family released the news of marrying concubine Qin Shui, but Qianyuan Jianzhong did not respond at all, neither admitting nor denying it. What does this mean?" Zhou Mubai smiled. "What else can there be? The decision of the concubine sect master and Qin patriarch to marry was blocked within the Qianyuan sword sect." Encountered. Yang Gongwan was a little puzzled. Although the sect master of the imperial concubine eradicated the Yiyin family and obtained the highest power of the Qianyuan sword sect, there are more than 10 top true monarchs in the Qianyuan sword sect, and there are hundreds of all the Yuanying true monarchs combined. With so many Yuanying true monarchs, it is impossible to make a decision based on the words of the concubine sect master. Yang Gongwan thought for a while, then nodded and said, "That's true. The bigger the power, the more interests are involved." Zhou Mubai nodded, That's the truth. Qinyuan Jianzong is not a small family like us, and every decision it makes must be discussed by all the high-level officials. The marriage between the imperial concubine and the patriarch Chen had a great impact on the situation in Wanxinghai, and the senior officials of Qinyuan Jianzong would not agree so easily. Speaking of this, the two fell silent for a while. It is foreseeable that once Qin Daoxian and concubine Qin Shui get married, the situation of Wanxinghai will undergo earth-shaking changes. As members of the many family forces in Wanxinghai, how could the Zhou family and the Yang family not care? Twin Lakes Island. A young figure suddenly appeared above Shuanghu Road. As the consciousness unfolded, a trace of surprise flashed across Qinzhan's face. You have actually broken through to the nascent soul stage. Say. His figure flashed again and disappeared. Patriarch Immortal Mansion. Zhan Zhan's figure suddenly appeared in Qin Daoxuan's closed room. Perceiving the person coming, Qin Daoxian opened his eyes and looked at him helplessly. Aren't you going to knock on the door? Well, forgot. Qinzhan shrugged. Senior sister asked me to give it to you. Having said that, Qinzhan threw a gourd-shaped magic weapon directly at Qin Daoxian. The latest Dongtian magic weapon in the refining hall is much bigger than the small tower you had before. Play Zhan to explain. Qin Daoxian took the gourd cave heavenly artifact thrown by Qinzhan, and while immersing his consciousness in it he said, Your senior sister asked you to come here just to give this? Of course not. Before Qinzhan could finish speaking he was interrupted by Qin Daoxian. Have you taken down the 4 great demon kingdoms? Hear this. There was a hint of pride on Qinzhan's face. How about it, hurry up? The surprised look on Qin Daoxuan's face slowly subsided and he nodded. The speed is indeed fast enough, not to mention the extreme night demon country, the strength of the great Yuan demon country and the lion camel demon country is extraordinary. The 2 big demon kingdoms combined are comparable to the weaker second-rate sects in Xianyunsu. I didn't expect you to take it down in more than half a year. It's not all my credit. Over the years, the Shadow Palace has also had a lot of layouts in these 2 demon kingdoms, and even a lot of layouts. Apart from Senior Sister and the Hall Master of the Shadow Palace, even I don't know. Qinzhan sighed. For a long time he thought that he knew everything about the Qinyuan sword sect, but this time he included the 4 major demon kingdoms and found that he was wishful thinking. He didn't know much about the many arrangements of Qinyuan sword sect. For example, he had never heard of the layout of the Shadow Palace in the Great Yuan Demon Nation. For a long time, Qinzhan thought that the Qinyuan sword sect had no arrangements for the Great Yuan Demon Kingdom, but he did not expect that the Shadow Palace was not only arranged, but also penetrated into the harem of the Lord of the Great Yuan Demon Country. It can be described as scheming to the extreme. This time, all the resisting forces of the Great Yuan Demon Nation can be wiped out in one sweep. Although the strength of Qinzhan World Realm occupies the first place, the support work of intelligence cannot be underestimated. Otherwise, there are so many demon masters in the Great Yuan Demon Kingdom, and they will not stand in the same place stupidly, waiting for the Qinyuan sword sect to annihilate them. Once the Qinyuan sword sect's extermination of the Great Yuan Demon Kingdom is revealed, it will not end well. It is not a trivial matter for the monks of the Phoenix Meteor Realm to invade the true demon realm. The consequences of this, the small Qinyuan Jianzong can't bear it at all. The reason why Qin Daoxian was so sure that Qinzhan had taken down all the 4 demon kingdoms was because the gourd-shaped cave artifact he sent contained the massive resources he desperately needed. Among them, blood marrow and black crystal have the most resources. Looking around, about 2/3 of the entire cave is occupied by these 2 treasures. In addition to blood marrow and black crystal, the remaining 1/3 is the blue wood steel mine from the extreme night demon country. What Qinzhan brought was not an empty cave artifact, but a massive resource of an entire cave artifact. Senior Sister said this is her dowry. After thinking for a while, Qinzhan said again, Oh yes, Senior Sister also knows that you need Jieyuan's waste beads, right? She said that the Jieyuanzhu waste beads continued by Qinyuan Jianzong are all yours. It's just that there are too many waste beads. After you and your senior sister get married, go to the sect to get them. Qinzhan said a lot in one go, babbling like an old mother. Suddenly, Qinzhan stopped talking, looked up at Qin Daoxian, his eyes were a little red and said, Qin Daoxian, you have to be nice to my senior sister, otherwise I swear by Qinzhan, I will never die with you in this life. Looking at Qinzhan's heartfelt words, Qin Daoxian nodded, Don't worry. Okay, I believe you. Qinzhan came over and wanted to pat Qin Daoxian on the shoulder, but after thinking about it he seemed to think that this was inappropriate. Now Qin Daoxuan's identity has changed, he is no longer the junior he could pat on the shoulder at will, and the other party is about to become his brother-in-law. Qin Zhan, who has been educated by the elders and children since childhood, naturally can no longer make such random actions. Qin Daoxian looked at Qin Zhan's hand in the air, and knew what he wanted to do. Before he could pat his shoulder, he patted the other person's shoulder first. See? Qin Zhan stared, his expression quite dissatisfied, but then his face showed a helpless expression. By the way, my senior sister asked me to come over. There is one more thing I need to clarify with you. What's the matter? Qin Daoxian saw his serious expression, and his face became serious. Last time, after my senior sister returned to the sect, I proposed to the senior sect to marry you, but the senior sect was unanimously opposed. It is thanks to the senior who eliminated Yi Yin's family, otherwise it may be a big mess this time. Moth. Qin Zhan shook his head and sighed and continued, although Yi Yin's family has been eradicated and senior sister is in control, her status in the sect is definitely not as good as yours in the Qin family. Moreover, what senior sister did this time has indeed hurt the interests of the sect, and it is normal to be opposed by the senior sect. Heard the words. Qin Daoxian was silent. Fei Qinxue chose to marry him. On the one hand, the three views of the two were compatible, and on the other hand, Fei Qinxue understood the terrifying talent of Qin Daoxian. When she chose to marry Qin Daoxian, she was making a big gamble with herself and Qinyuan Jianzong as a bet. If the bet is won, in the future the alliance forces of Qinyuan Jianzong and the Qin family may be expected to have a glimpse of the topmost position in the Phoenix Meteor realm and become a member of the highest seat in Tianzhuan City. Losing the bet is just a share of Wan Xinghai's ruling authority to the Qin family. As for herself, concubine Qinxue did not think that marrying Qin Daoxian was a loss. Her previous proposal to marry Qin Daoxian was also the result of careful consideration. What does your sister want me to do? Qin Zhan smiled and said, Senior sister, let me ask you, do you want to be the leader of this alliance? Qin Daoxian nodded unceremoniously. Senior sister really guessed right, Qin Zhan sighed. I don't understand, why are you all thinking about occupying the highest position of power? It's so good to be like me, to focus on improving your own cultivation and strength, and you don't have to worry about those troubles. Having the highest position of power and not worrying about things are not in conflict. Hearing this, Qin Zhan thought for a while. It seemed that the senior sister did not have much involvement in the specific matters of the sect, but she firmly controlled the supreme power of the sect. This is the difference between monks and mortals. If in the mortal kingdom, the emperor does not ask about the affairs of the court for a long time, and it will not take long for the power to fall. But in the power of cultivation this kind of thing does not happen. Those in power can firmly grasp the power of the sect as long as they ensure that their own strength is ahead of the others, and they can get the most powerful group of people in the sect. As for the specific things in the sect master rarely asks. After all, when the cultivation base has reached the nascent soul stage, it is possible that it will take dozens or even hundreds of years to retreat for a single retreat. Do you still need to cultivate? Qin Daoxian is the same now. He basically handed over the specific affairs of the family to Qin Daolian. Only major events related to the family's future and destiny will Qin Daolian report to him. As the head of the Qin family, he sometimes acts more like a needle and a flag. Qin Zhan shook his head, no longer thought about it, and continued, Senior sister said, if you want to become the leader of this new alliance, you must break through to the primordial spirit stage one step ahead of her. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian frowned but did not speak. What, do you feel stressed again? Qin Zhan smiled. Comparing your Qin family and my Qinyuan sword sect, there is indeed a huge gap in strength. If you want to be the leader of this alliance, you must have the strength to suppress the heroes. Although the second floor of the world realm surpasses the top level of Qinyuan sword sect, but it can't surpass my senior sister, not to mention that your current cultivation level is not comparable to my senior sister. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian sighed and said, it seems that the trip to Liangjiuan is inevitable. You're thinking, well, I want to go to Tianzhuan City and find someone to refine Xingyuan pill. Qin Zhan nodded, your current cultivation is at the first level of nascent soul. If you refine 300 years of Xingyuan fruit into Xingyuan Dan, it is conservatively estimated that you can refine 3, which is enough for you to raise your cultivation to 100%. Nascent soul is at its peak. The peak of nascent soul, the second floor of the world. This cultivation base and the realm of the great Tao are only on par with concubine Qinxue. This is not to mention that Qin Daoxuan's body training is behind Fei Qinxue. However, Qin Daoxuan's cultivation had really reached this point, and Fei Qinxue forcibly pushed him to the throne of the alliance leader, which was barely reasonable. Otherwise, with Qin Daoxuan's first-level cultivation base, Even if his Tao realm reaches the second level of the world realm, there will be a large number of people who will not be convinced. After all, the alliance between the Qin family and Qinyuan Jianzong, sharing the ruling authority of Qinyuan Jianzong, has already made the high-level quarrel of Qinyuan Jianzong. Let Qin Daoxian serve as the leader of this alliance. The difficulty is no less than letting concubine Qinxue abdicate directly and cede the position of suzerain to Qin Daoxian. One can imagine how exaggerated the difficulty is. 7017K. Chapter 425. The Peak of Yuaning. Qin Daoxian muttered immediately, his gaze became extremely firm. He knew that Fei Qinxue advocated an alliance between Qinyuan Jianzong and the Qin family, and elected him as the leader of this alliance, which would definitely be unanimously opposed by Qinyuan Jianzong. He could even imagine that the disciples of Qinyuan sword sect might privately claim that concubine Qinxue betrayed the sect. Fei Qinxue was under so much pressure for him, of course Qin Daoxian would not disappoint the other party. Besides, only with a strong own strength can one survive in the coming chaos. It is a matter of time before the demon court unifies the real demon world. Although Qin Daoxian has a layout in the real demon world, it is still unknown how much trouble it can cause the demon court to integrate the real demon world. Even if Qin Daoxian's layout can bring certain obstacles to the unification of the demon court, the obstacles must be very limited. The reason is very simple: Wan Xinghai's strength is insufficient. In the general battle between the real demon world and the phoenix world, strength is the foundation. Qin Daoxian's layout is only a trail after all. Of course, although it is a trail, it can also bring more buffer time for the rise of Wan Xinghai and his own growth. The later the demon court unites the real demon world, the later the war between the two worlds will break out. With Qin Daoxian's talent, he will definitely be able to break through to a higher level before the war between the two worlds. According to Qin Daoxian's own thoughts, he intends to break through the cultivation base to the transcendence period before the war between the two worlds completely breaks out. As for the Mahayana true immortal, Qin Daoxian dare not think about it because no one in the Phoenix meteor world has been able to achieve this level of cultivation for hundreds of thousands of years. There must be some fortunate secrets that he does not yet understand. However, Qin Daoxian is bound to gain the cultivation base during the robbery period. Only when his cultivation reached the transcending tribulation period, the two major forces of the Qin family and the Qinyuan sword sect under his control could barely rank at the top of the Phoenix meteor realm. In the future, a war between the two worlds will break out, and in the entire Phoenix meteor world, I am afraid that only the top heavenly venerate level forces will not be sacrificed as cannon fodder. Qin Daoxian's closed room. Qin Zhan took a deep look at Qin Daoxian and said, "I have brought all the things and words that senior sister asked me to bring, and it is up to you what to do next." Qin Daoxian nodded, cupped his hands and said, "Brother Qin, walk slowly." The words just finished. Qin Zhan's figure instantly disappeared in front of Qin Daoxian. Watching Qin Zhan leave, Qin Daoxian couldn't help clenching the gourd in his hand. Think about it. Qin Daoxian swept away his consciousness and found Luo Li, who was cultivating in the immortal mansion. Qin Lang? Luo Li withdrew from the state of refining spiritual energy, raised his head in surprise, and looked at the empty retreat room. "It's me." Qin Daoxian's voice rang in Luo Li's ears. He hesitated. "Liar, I have something to tell you." Hearing Qin Daoxian's tone, Luo Li immediately froze. The last time Qin Daoxian spoke to her in this tone, he told her that the other party wanted to become a Taoist companion with Fei Qinxue. Now, when Qin Daoxian spoke to her in this tone again, Luo Li had to be nervous. You said. Qin Daoxian said a little embarrassedly, "I have to retreat for a period of time, and after this retreat is over, I may have to go out again." "Shut up again?" Luo Li frowned. "You didn't just break through the nascent soul stage, and you said that you have already consolidated your realm, so you don't need to retreat anymore. Why?" "I want to condense the indestructible real body," Qin Daoxian said bluntly. "Heard." Luo Li nodded with a complicated expression. "Qin Lang retreats with peace of mind. I will take care of the family affairs with Sister Dao Lian." "Thank you." Hearing this, Luo Li's face suddenly softened. "It's not hard." After notifying Luo Li, Qin Daoxian prepared to retreat again. He retreated this time to prepare to raise his body training to the level of condensing his indestructible true body. Divided according to the realm of body training. Condensing the indestructible real body is probably equivalent to the level of qi refining and cultivation at the peak of Yuan Ying's peak. That is to say, once Qin Daoxian condenses his indestructible real body, his body cultivation practice can surpass his qi cultivation practice in one fell swoop. Since cultivating The true body of the demon god of Du Tian, Qin Daoxuan's body refinement can be described as 1,000 miles in a day. Under the premise of sufficient body refining resources, his body refining speed is almost not much slower than the speed of taking Xingyuan Guo to improve his qi cultivation. I had been practicing for a few days before. Qin Daoxian broke through from the skull-shattering realm to the blood-dropping realm, and then he quickly raised his body training to the peak of the blood-dropping realm. Moreover, the fire of the devil in his Tanzhong cave had already begun to transform in advance. Qin Daoxian had a hunch that as long as he provided sufficient blood marrow, the fire of the devil would be transformed into a higher level in an instant. Even with the power level of the fire of the demon god, it is not under the infant fire of ordinary nascent soul cultivators. Don't forget, the more a monk cultivates to the later stage, the more exaggerated the consumption of resources. Moreover, the body refining resources consumed in the early stage are hundreds of times that of ordinary monks, and there may be more in the future. In the face of this gold-swallowing beast technique, even the rich and powerful Qin Daoxian couldn't stand it. Fortunately, this time he secretly controlled the 4 major demon nations and tapped into the physical refining resources of the 4 major demon nations, so Qin Daoxian made a fortune. According to Qin Zhan's statement, Feichen Shui had sent all the body refining resources and greenwood steel that were excavated by the 4 great demon kingdoms to Qin Daoxian. Although some of the mines in the 4 major demon kingdoms still remain, Qin Daoxian estimates that the remaining resources are probably not many, maybe, not even 1/10 of what he has in his hands. It could be said that Fei Qinshui was already doing her best to support him in his position. Qin Daoxian is not a fool, of course he can feel this kindness. Raising his hand, Qin Daoxian looked at the gourd in his hand, and rubbed his left hand gently as if the gourd still had the remaining warmth of Fei Qinshui. Subsequently, his eyes looked in the direction of Qinyuan Sword Sect. Wait for me, Qin Daoxian said silently. Qinyuan Sword Sect. A majestic fairy palace stands above the clouds. Outside the immortal palace, clouds steaming in Xiaowei and groups of cranes flying by, are extremely beautiful. Sudden. A figure suddenly appeared in the fairy palace. It was Qin Zhan. Have things been delivered? Inside the immortal palace, concubine Qinshui was wearing a long lavender dress. Sitting in front of the desk, holding a paintbrush in her hand, she was drawing lightly with ink. Looking at the painting on the rice paper, it is a picture of a crane in the sunset. Qin Zhan nodded. Deliver it. Okay. Fei Qinshui turned her head back without raising her head, and began to concentrate on painting again. At this time, Qin Zhan couldn't bear it any longer and said, Senior sister, I admit that Brother Chen's talent is amazing, even if it is you and me it is far inferior to him, but you promised to make Qinyuan Jianzong alliance with the Chen family, and recommend him as the leader. Alliance leader is the bet too big. Hearing this, Fei Qinshui raised her head, looked at Qin Zhan and sighed. Junior brother, what do you think will happen once the demon court unites with the true demon realm? 2 worlds war. Qin Zhan was decisive and did not hesitate. Fei Qinshui nodded. Yes, the war between the 2 worlds, junior brother. At that time, where will my Qinyuan sword sect go? This Qin Zhan choked for a moment. In terms of strength, my Qinyuan sword sect can only be regarded as a second-rate sect, and in terms of background, my Qinyuan sword sect has no background. Although my Qinyuan sword sect inheritance is not weak, it is also a true immortal inheritance, but our true immortal inheritance is different from other families. You should be very clear about this reason. Hearing this, Qin Zhan fell silent. Indeed, it is different from those top sects and top families. Although everyone is a true immortal inheritance, there are differences between the true immortal inheritance and the true immortal inheritance. Just like the Jiang family, its ancestors developed little by little. Before the ancestor of the Jiang family ascended to the upper realm, the Jiang family was already the top force in the Phoenix Meteor realm. Coupled with the pile of cards left by Jiang Laozu, the Jiang family has survived hundreds of thousands of years and still firmly occupies the seat of the top forces in the Fengyun world. The Qinyuan sword sect was different. Although in terms of Taoism, Qinyuan Jianzong is also a true immortal Taoist. But it is a sect that was established casually before the ascension of Qinyuan Jinxian. In the ancient times, there was a group of true immortals who were unwilling to cut off their Taoism before their ascension, so they left some instruments and exercises to establish a sect before their ascension. Qinyuan Jianzong was established in that period. In the Fengyun world, there are many sects like Qinyuan Jianzong, which were established by the Mahayana real immortals, but most of them have disappeared in the long river of history. Only a few of them have survived to this day. After all, hundreds of thousands of years are really too long, so long that even the heavenly venerate transcends tribulation. I don't know how many people have been seeded. It is a miracle in itself that Qianyuan Jianzong can persist until now. Because in these hundreds of thousands of years, even the top forces have vanished, let alone a second-rate sect like Qianyuan Jianzong. After a long while, Qinzhan raised his head. So senior sister thinks that the vitality of my Qianyuan sword sect is in Daoyuqin? Right, Fei Qinshua nodded, then looked out the window again. The troubled times are coming. Twin Lakes Island. Patriarch Immortal Mansion. In the secret room. Qin Daoxian has been in retreat for 3 days. For 3 days for the nascent soul cultivator, it was like a flick of a finger. But for Qin Daoxian these 3 days were not easy. The Gourd Cave Heaven artifact, which Fei Qinshua asked Qinzhan to personally send, is the latest type of Cave Heaven artifact created by Qianyuan Jianzong. Its internal space is more than 10 times larger than the small tower cave that Qin Daoxian obtained. This is the first time Qin Daoxian has seen such a large cave artifact. This portable cave artifact is different from the Qin family's large transport ship. Although the Qin family's large transport ship also has a cave inside, the transport ship itself is very large, and the cave it accommodates is naturally very large. But the gourd in his hand is different. Qin Daoxian can hold this gourd with one hand, and it is not an easy task to embed such a big cave inside. Of course, compared with the various resources contained in this Dongtian magical artifact, this gourd Dongtian magical artifact is nothing. These 3 days, Qin Daoxian used this dark gray devil fire to frantically refine the blood marrow in the gourd cave heaven magical tool. Because there are too many blood marrow in the gourd, Qin Daoxian is too lazy to use his spiritual sense to count them. For the past 3 days he has been repeating an action that is taking blood marrow, refining, taking blood marrow, refining again. 3 days of work, under this almost crazy refining, the fire of the devil in Qin Daoxian's Tanzhong cave finally had a new change. Compared with before, Qin Daoxian's demon fire has changed from dark gray to pure black. At first glance, the fire of the devil was dark and frightening. When he opened his mouth and spit, the fire of the devil spit out from Qin Daoxian's mouth, and then quietly suspended in front of him. Qin Daoxian stared at the pure black demon fire and muttered, "I don't know if you can refine black crystals now." In the past 3 days Qin Daoxian used all the refined blood marrow to enhance the fire of the devil, not to enhance his physical strength. Because Qin Daoxian firmly believes that sharpening knives does not mistake chopping wood. Therefore his body training is still the same as before, only the peak of the blood-dripping realm. Now that Demon God's fire has successfully transformed, of course he has to further improve his body refinement cultivation base in one fell swoop. 7017K. Chapter 426. Quiet indoors. The pure black fire of the Demon God was quietly suspended. Qin Daoxian breathed a sigh of relief, and took out a black crystal from the Gourd Cave heavenly artifact. It is the inextinguishable true meaning condensate 1 by 1 black crystal. The surface of the black crystal is extremely hard, and even with Qin Daoxian's physical body, pure strength alone cannot shake it. Qin Daoxian raised his hand and slowly threw the black crystal into the pure black fire of the devil. Laugh. I saw that the black crystal melted instantly as if the ice and snow met the scorching sun. Immediately afterwards, an inexplicable breath rushed towards his body from the black fire of the devil. This is. Qin Daoxian only felt that the strength of his physical body, which had fallen into a bottleneck, began to increase sharply. Every moment he felt the surging power that was constantly pouring out of his flesh. This power is very pure, completely different from the power of the law. It is pure physical power since there is no reference. Qin Daoxian does not know the extent of his current physical strength, but he knows that his physical body has definitely broken the boundary of the blood drop realm and entered a new realm. Unexpectedly, the practice of Zhu Rong's real body is completely different from the traditional body refining method. It is not a brutal integration of the inextinguishable true meaning into the flesh and blood, but is refined by the fire of the devil, and then integrated into the flesh. Qin Daoxian said silently. Qin Daoxian couldn't be more clear about the benefits of doing this. Although the body-refining treasure of indestructible true meaning is good, it has a disadvantage, that is, a body-refining cultivator cannot incorporate too much inextinguishable true meaning into the body at one time. If the cultivator does not control it well and integrates too many inextinguishable true meanings at one time, it is possible that the cultivator's flesh body is completely assimilated by the inextinguishable true meaning. As a result, the cultivator's body turned into an invisible black mist. Unexplained cultivators may think that the fleshly body turned into an invisible and intangible black mist form. Isn't it similar to the legendary immortal body? Actually, the two are completely different. Immortal body is a brand new body condensed by monks who successfully transcended tribulation and broke through to Mahayana true immortal. After being forged by multiple forces, it is also called immortal body. And the body of an ordinary monk cannot be compared with it at all. Although from the outside, the physical body assimilated by the true meaning of immortality will have some characteristics of the immortal body, but the cultivator's consciousness will completely turn into nothingness at the moment when the physical body is assimilated by the true meaning of immortality. At that time, monks cannot be called monks but the new meaning of immortality. There are many powerful cultivators in the Phoenix Meteor realm and the True Demon realm guessing that the true meaning of immortality may be derived from the flesh and blood of some powerful creatures. And the real body of Zhu Rong, who was cultivated by Qin Daoxian, had no such worries at all. Because in essence, the increase in the strength of his physical body does not rely on the direct integration of indestructible true meaning into the physical body, but a special substance that has been refined by the fire of the devil. Qin Daoxian didn't know what to call this substance, but he had previously madly improved his body refinement cultivation, all of which depended on this special substance. The resources that are equivalent to his improving the physical strength are chewed by the fire of the devil, and all harmful substances have been filtered out. Qin Daoxian's thoughts couldn't help drifting away after feeling the crazy improvement of his body training. Body cultivation can be improved wildly in this way, but what about qi cultivation? For a time, Qin Daoxian couldn't help thinking a lot. Like body refining resources, qi refining resources also contain many harmful substances, such as the most common medicinal pills. Why can't you be reckless when you practice taking medicine pills? It is because there is a thing called erysipelas in the medicine pill. No matter how clever an alchemist is, it is impossible to completely remove the erysipelas in the medicine pill, but it can only be said to try to get rid of it as much as possible. But in this way, cultivators will inevitably encounter many problems when they cultivate with the help of medicinal pills. For example, the efficiency of taking pills to cultivate, such as not taking pills in large quantities and so on. If this fire of the devil can also refine the harmful substances in the medicine pill, doesn't this mean that his qi refining cultivation can be similar to his body refining cultivation? As long as he has enough resources, he can improve unscrupulously. After cultivators reach the nascent soul stage, the first element that hinders cultivators from improving their cultivation is often no longer resources, but the realm of the Tao. But what Qin Daoxian is most afraid of is to improve the realm of the Tao. For a long time, due to the existence of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic, the speed of Qin Daoxian's improvement in the realm of the Tao has far exceeded the speed of his cultivation. Even if Qin Daoxian took the treasures that quickly improved his cultivation many times, he would not be able to keep up with the improvement of the realm of the Tao. It is estimated that in the entire Fengyun world, Qin Daoxian is also the only person who is troubled by the rapid improvement of the Tao realm. The cultivation base can't keep up with the realm, although in the eyes of outsiders, it will create an illusion of sweeping the same level of invincibility. But Qin Daoxian doesn't need to sweep the same level invincible, what he needs is a strong strength. If his cultivation reached the primordial spirit stage, his strength would be at least 10 times or even 100 times stronger than he is now. Isn't this much more real than some invincible title of the same rank? After all, on the battlefield, whoever plays with you will be the general. In the battlefield outside the two worlds, the battle between monks and world demons only depends on one thing: one's strength. Yuanshan-level demons attack the monks in the Yuanying period, and it is commonplace in the battlefield outside the two realms. Similarly, high-level human monks also often slaughter low-level demons. On the battlefield outside the territory, the world demon can't bully the small without telling the monks. Even for their own safety, many high-level world monsters specially hunted and killed human monks with lower cultivation levels than them on the battlefield outside the territory. Not only the world monsters, the human monks have been on the battlefield outside the territory for a long time, and they will become unscrupulous because their no rules are more important than survival. This is very different from the sect battle within the Fengyun realm. Although a large-scale war broke out between Qinyuan Jianzong and Shenqing Dao League, it was rare that high-level monks massacred low-level monks. Even if there is, it is only a small-scale slaughter. And Qinyuan Jianzong will also try to cover it up. For example, Ji Suhui, a cultivator of the Ji family who was killed by Qin Daoxian, was an executioner who often slaughtered low-level cultivators on the battlefield of Izumo. When he ended, he was ordered by Qinyuan Jianzong to be transferred back, and he was not allowed to step into the battlefield of Iron Kingdom for the rest of his life. Because the struggle between the sects of the Fengyun realm is essentially a competition for interests and resources. It's not that one side wants to completely exterminate everyone on the other side. Although the Qinyuan Sword Sect has now brought the Izumo Kingdom under its control, the Qinyuan Sword Sect has not violated the countless mortals and loose cultivators of the Izumo country. On the contrary, Qinyuan Jianzong issued a decree to protect the safety of Izumo mortals and loose cultivators as soon as they occupied Izumo, which quickly stabilized people's hearts and the situation. The world demon is different. In the battlefield outside the two worlds, there is no compromise between the human monks and the world monsters. As long as one party is convinced that it can kill the other party, it will definitely kill the other party. Human monks sometimes keep their hands, because they have a secret technique similar to Soul Seal, which can enslave the demons. The world demons rarely keep their hands. In the battlefield outside the two realms, once the human race cultivator is defeated, the only fate is to become the nourishment of the source realm in the world demon. Therefore, after entering the extraterritorial battlefield, the first lesson that monks need to learn is to throw away all kindness and use all kinds of unscrupulous means to the extreme. Only in this way can it be possible to survive on the battlefield outside the territory. Of course, not everyone needs this, such as some strong people with absolute strength. No. Because the two sides did not break out a large-scale war in the extraterritorial battlefield. The fighting between the two sides is limited to the Yuanshan stage and below. Therefore, some of the top powerhouses in the Yuanshan period have become absolutely unprovoked existences in the extraterritorial battlefield. This knowledge is absolutely necessary for cultivators who go to the battlefield outside the territory for the first time. Because at the critical moment, this knowledge may save your little life. Qin Daoxuan's strength is a hard-to-find opponent in Wanxinghai, but in the battlefield outside the two realms of the two realms, he is not a strong man. The true monarch on the second floor of the world realm, although he is not at the bottom of the battlefield outside the two realms abyss. But it is definitely not a top powerhouse. In the battlefield outside the territory, Yuanshan Daojun dare not say that he has absolute self-protection power. This is also the reason why many first-class sects in the Fengyun world dare not send monks to the battlefield outside the territory. Because in the first-class sect, Yuanshan Daojun is the top-level power, and this level of power is only consumable in the field outside the territory. Quiet indoors. With the transformation of Demon God's fire, it can refine black crystals with little effort at all. Qin Daoxuan's physical strength was rapidly increased under the special substance fed back by the fire of the devil. This kind of rocket-like training speed Qin Daoxian simply couldn't stop. Unlike taking Xingyuan fruit, that thing is too rare after all. Although the true meaning of immortality is also very precious, compared with the only Saint Yuan fruit in the entire Fengyun realm, there are many more channels to obtain it. Only using the fire of the devil to refine the inextinguishable true meaning can be comparable to the cultivation speed of taking Xingyuan fruit. Who can resist? In the gourd magic implement, the mountain of black crystals accumulated rapidly diminished. Qin Daoxuan's physical body, in less than a day, has risen to the threshold of condensing the indestructible real body. But at this time his body training was stuck again. To be precise, it's not that his body training is stuck, but his demon god's fire is accumulating energy for promotion again. Qin Daoxian found that compared to body training, Zhu Rongzhenshin's body training method seems to be more focused on the fire of the devil. Because the resources consumed by promoting this group of devil fire are far higher than simply improving the physical strength, I don't know how much higher. The Dong Tian artifact sent by Qin Zhan could contain more than 90% of the black crystals from the four major demon kingdoms. It is no exaggeration to say that these black crystals are almost enough for all the nascent soul cultivators in the entire Wanxinghai to condense their indestructible true bodies. Fei Qinxue sent such a large amount of body refining resources directly, which shows how much he supports from Qin Daoxian. Without any exaggeration, the resources in this gourd-shaped cave-like artifact in Qin Daoxuan's hands are more than 10 times more precious than all the assets of the Qin family combined. This wealth, even for Qinyuan Jianzong, is an amazing wealth. But concubine Qinxue quietly ordered Qin Zhan to send it to Qin Daoxian. Therefore, Qin Daoxian will say that he will not forget these words of this kindness. But gradually, Qin Daoxian discovered that some of these resources were not enough for him to be promoted to this group of devil fire. How so? 4 months later, Qin Daoxian was stunned. For 4 full months, this group of demon god's fire maintained a high-speed refining and swallowing black crystal for 4 months, but there was no change in the slightest. It can't be said that there is no change. Qin Daoxian feels that its color seems to have become deeper. Other than that, nothing has changed. As for the power of the fire of the devil, Qin Daoxian is not very clear, but thinking about the consumption of so many resources, the power will not be low. But this is not what Qin Daoxian cares about. He needs this group of demon fire to be promoted, and then he needs to condense Zhu Rong's real body. Because once Zhu Rong's real body is condensed successfully, his demon fire will usher in a complete transformation. At that time, Qin Daoxian estimated that even if he did not break through to the primordial spirit stage, with this spirit fire secret technique, he would still be able to gain a foothold in the extraterritorial battlefield. Although he is mentally prepared, he will go to the battlefield outside the two realms to find out. But after all, it is different from Wanxinghai and Xianyun continent. Its danger level is many times higher than that of Phoenix Meteor Realm. Although Qin Daoxian went there not to fight, but to beg someone to refine Xingyuan pill. But without enough strength, how can you protect yourself in an extraterritorial battlefield where war may break out at any time? It is precisely because of this that Qin Daoxian did not hesitate to spend a lot of resources, and wanted to completely improve his cultivation to the extreme before going to the extraterritorial battlefield. Unfortunately, God did not wish. He envisaged to raise the cultivation base to the realm of condensing the indestructible real body, which is destined to be impossible to achieve. Half-year later. The door and formation of the quiet room opened. The exhausted Qin Daoxian slowly walked out of the closed room. Qin Lang. In the quiet room, Luo Li, who saw Qin Daoxian, immediately greeted him with concern in his eyes. Looking at Luo Li, Qin Daoxian's exhaustion seemed to have disappeared. He gently opened his hand and embraced the beautiful woman in his arms. He buried his head forcefully into the other's thick hair and took a deep breath. Afterwards, Qin Daoxian raised his head, looked at Luo Li's haggard eyes and said softly, "Didn't I say so? I'm just improving my body training, I don't need to protect the law for me." Luo Li shook his head, buried his head in Qin Daoxian's arms and did not speak. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian quietly embraced her, enjoying the silence of this moment. But soon, this quiet atmosphere was broken. Luo Li seemed to notice something and like a frightened rabbit, broke away from Qin Daoxian's arms. Qin Daoxian let go of Luo Li, and narrowed his eyes slightly as he looked at the escaping light from far to near. "Patriarch, are you out?" As the light of escape fell, Qin Daochu saw Qin Daoxian with a surprised expression on his face. Immediately afterwards, Qin Daochu's face changed from surprise to joy, and he said with joy, "That's great, I was going to call you before I came. What's the matter, so happy?" "Patriarch, look," Qin Daochu said and immediately handed a storage ring to Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian took the storage ring, swept away his consciousness, and a look of joy appeared on his face. The speed of the refining hall is really fast. 7017K. Chapter 427, Qinyuan Sword Sect. A figure suddenly appeared in front of the Zhongmen Great Formation. "Stop the comers." In the Mountain Protection Formation, a voice sounded in Qin Daoxian's ear. Immediately afterwards, a series of escaping lights quickly flew out of the formation, and when the patrolling disciples saw the person coming, they were all shocked. Qin Jinren, no, the younger generation pays respect to Qin Jinjuan. The leading disciples of Qinyuan Jianzong hurriedly bowed to Qin Daoxian. The patrolling disciples behind him all followed him and saluted Qin Daoxian together. Qin Daoxian nodded, took out a few bottles of medicinal pills from the storage ring at will, and sent them out to everyone, saying bluntly, "I'm here to see Fei Qinxue." Hearing this, everyone looked at each other in dismay. In recent days, the rumors in the sect that the sect master and Qin Daoxian, the patriarch of the Qin family, are about to become Taoist companions have not stopped. Of course, these patrolling disciples also heard about it. Especially when they heard Qin Daoxian's title to the sect master, there was a sense of resentment in their hearts. What? Their Qinyuan sword sect is the ruler of Wanxinghai, and even if the Qin family leader is astonishingly talented, it is impossible to take the position of Qinyuan sword sect master. Seeing that several of the inspecting disciples present did not accept the medicinal pill he sent, nor open the mountain protection formation, Qin Daoxian finally felt the hostility of the Qinyuan sword sect disciples towards him. Previously, he heard Qin Zhan say that the disciples of the Qinyuan sword sect were very repelled by his marriage with his concubine Qin Shui, and he didn't feel deeply. Now he finally felt deeply. "Why, don't you even want me in the sect?" Qin Daoxian smiled slightly, "Junior dare not." Although the leading inspecting disciples said that they did not dare, they did not mean to open the mountain protection formation for Qin Daoxian at all. Just when the two sides were deadlocked, a cold voice entered everyone's ears. Bold. Whose disciples are you guys, so ignorant of etiquette? How dare you neglect this distinguished guest? Qin Daoxian immediately heard that this was concubine Chengshi's voice. Sect master, forgive me, we. A group of inspecting disciples were trembling with fear, bowed their heads and were speechless. Go to the punishment hall by yourself to receive the punishment. Yes. The head of the patrolling disciple was like an eggplant beaten by frost, bowing his head, not daring to defend himself. After concubine Qinxue finished her lesson and inspected the disciples, Qinyuan Jianzong's mountain protection formation slowly opened. Qin Daoxian didn't even look at them, he stepped into the mountain protection formation, and disappeared in front of everyone in an instant. Brother, what should we do now? The rest of the disciples looked at the patrolling disciple at the head and asked. Let's go to the punishment hall to receive the punishment. The leading patrolling disciple sighed. Beside him, a junior brother who was close to him persuaded him, Senior brother, you and I are only in the Purple Palace period, why bother to go to this muddy water? Hearing this, the inspecting disciple headed up and said solemnly, Qinyuan Sword Sect is not the sect of the sect master, but the sect of all the disciples of my Qinyuan Sword Sect. Even if the suzerain is in front of me today, I, Jianghu, still have this attitude. Senior brother, no need to say more, let's go and receive the punishment together. Yeah, the sect master's decision, even if we don't agree, what can we do? Alas, Qinyuan Jianzong. Qinyuan Jianzong, give it up. Some people sigh, some are discouraged. But their attitudes were surprisingly consistent. That is, they did not agree with the marriage of Fei Qinxue and Qin Daoxian, let alone the alliance between Qinyuan Jianzong and the Qin family. Fei Chengshi's dojo. In front of a majestic Asgard. A young cultivator, with a playful expression on his face, looked at Qin Daoxian in front of him and said, How are you shriveled? Qin Daoxian nodded and sighed, What you said before was too polite, where are they? Disagreeing with the alliance of you and me is simply hostile. Qin Zhan shook his head. You also have to understand these disciples of Zongmen, in their eyes, Qinyuan Jianzong is the ruler of Wangxinghai. But now, the Qin family not only wants to share the ruling authority of our clan, but senior sister also intends to recommend you as the leader of this alliance. Can they not be hostile to you? Your senior sister has suffered. After a long while, Qin Daoxian choked out such a sentence. You still have some conscience. Qin Zhan pursed his lips. I know that your talent is amazing and your future achievements are limitless, but my senior sister is not someone who covets your support in the future. I know what your senior sister thinks. Qin Daoxian nodded solemnly. Fei Qinxue was willing to marry him, maybe 90% of the reason was for the future of the sect, but there were indeed some elements that matched his eyes. This point, Qin Daoxian can feel in his dealings with each other. Come in, my sister is waiting for you inside. Farewell. Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and walked into the Asgard. Qin Zhan glanced at Qin Daoxian's back, his figure flashed, and he disappeared in place in an instant. Inside Asgard, a slender woman in a white fairy dress turned her back to him and looked at the sea of clouds outside the window. Qin Daoxian silently walked to her side and accompanied her to watch the scenery outside the window. Congratulations on breaking through the nascent soul period. Fei Qinxue turned her head sideways, a sincere smile appeared on her pretty face. Thanks, Qin Daoxian paused. Did you and my alliance cause you a lot of trouble? Fei Qinxue looked at Qin Daoxian intently and said firmly, Don't worry, I can handle this. Hear this. Qin Daoxian no longer speaks. Up to now, he can only trust each other. Your troubles may be greater than mine. Fei Qinxue looked at Qin Daoxian. Liangjiyuan is not as simple as you think. Compared to the inside of Fengyun realm, the extraterritorial battlefield of Liangjiyuan is far more dangerous. There, the most elite forces of the two worlds were assembled. Even there are true immortal level existences on the side of the world monsters who are sitting in Liangjiyuan all year round. Fei Qinxue sighed. In the battlefield outside Liangjiyuan, my human cultivator has always been at a disadvantage. For hundreds of thousands of years, we can only rely on the true immortals who have ascended to the upper realm to leave formations and build a defense line in order to resist the invasion of the world monsters. But as the integration of the two worlds continues to advance, this line of defense has become precarious. Once this line of defense is broken, it may not be necessary for the demon court to unify the real demon world, and countless world demons will completely enter our Phoenix meteor realm. Seeing Fei Chengshi's worried appearance, Qin Daoxian said with relief, No matter what we need to do most is to improve our strength. Only in this way can we deal with all the crises that may arise in the future. Fei Qinshue looked at him, nodded and said, "You are right." After thinking about it, Qin Daoxian suggested, "I have an idea." "Go ahead." Concubine Qinshue said in a serious tone. "You know my Qin family's Magic Weapon Research Institute, right?" Concubine Qinshue nodded. "I heard a little bit, you told me last time, but unfortunately I couldn't visit one or two." In Fei Chengshi's mind, the Qin family's Magical Instrument Research Institute should be a functional department similar to the Qinyuan Jianzong's Artifact Refining Hall. Qin Daoxian didn't know what Concubine Qinshue was thinking and continued, "Although the alliances of you and me are temporarily hindered, we can first integrate Qinyuan Jianzong's Item Refining Hall and my Qin family's Magic Item Research Institute into together." "You mean, I want to use the talents of your Artifact Refining Hall and the model of the Qin Family Artifact Research Institute to create a unique artifact research institution?" Hearing this, Fei Qinshue thought for a while. "Then who should be in charge of this newly established department?" "You are in charge." Qin Daoxian continued, "My younger brother Qin Daochu is in charge of establishing a new model for the Research Institution of Magical Instruments, and the Hall Master Hu Yin is in charge of the deployment of talents for refining instruments." Qin Daoxuan's move can be said to have handed over the most core magic weapon research institute of the Qin family. But at the same time he also gained countless refining geniuses from Qinyuan sword sect. If these artifact refining geniuses were cultivated by the Qin family, it would take hundreds or even thousands of years. The craftsmen of Qinyuan sword sect have been selected and cultivated from generation to generation before they can have their current scale. It is impossible for the Qin family to catch up in a short time. One of the reasons why the Qin family's Magical Instrument Research Institute has been able to repeatedly produce significant results is that Qin Daoxian gave them a clear research goal. Another important reason is the great role played by the preaching function of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic. Without these two cofactors, Qin Daochu and the others wanted to come up with a series of research results, such as the Magic Tool Machine tool and the Talisman Lithography Machine, which is simply a dream. The Qinyuan Sword Sect's Refining Hall is different. Qinyuan Jianzong can launch a variety of innovative instruments one after another, all relying on the refining masters of the refining hall to play their terrifying talents. Absolutely no outside help. If these two are combined and the preaching function of the Hongmeng Enlightenment Classic is used at home, Qin Daoxian can't believe what kind of surprises this newly established magic weapon research department can give him in the future. When Fei Qinshue heard that Qin Daoxian had handed over the most important magical instrument research department to her, a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Trust is built up little by little, and Fei Qinshue felt that her previous efforts were not in vain. "It is good." Fei Qinshue nodded and agreed. After talking about the business, Qin Daoxian gently pulled up the other party's little hand and said, "I'm here to say goodbye to you." "I know. Gone?" "Okay." Qin Daoxian looked at Fei Qinshue, smiled and disappeared in front of her. From Wanxinghai to Liangjiyuan, the road is extremely long, and it is necessary to use space to transmit a large array. There is only one space teleportation formation from Wanxinghai to Xianyunzhu, and that is the teleportation formation established by Qinyuan Jianzong. And from the frontier land of Xianyun continent, there is not a single space teleportation formation going to Liangjiyuan. If Qin Daoxian wants to rush to Liangjiyuan, he must use the space of Tianyunzong to teleport the great formation to the core area of Xianyunzhu Wuji Xianmen. Wuji Xianmen is the first-class sect of Xianyunzhu. Apart from the top cultivation forces in Liangjiyuan, Wuji Xianmen is the first sect of Xianyunzhu. Compared with the second-rate sect of Qinyuan Jianzong, the power of its sect is not known how much stronger. Certainly. No matter how strong the power of Wuji Immortal sect is, it is only a first-class sect, and there is no heavenly lord of tribulation in the sect. Otherwise it would not be a first-class sect but a top-level sect. However, as the strongest first-class sect in Xianyunzhu, Wuji Xianmen holds a giant space teleportation formation connecting Xianyunzhu and Liangjiyuan. For hundreds of thousands of years with this formation, Wuji Xianmen has been standing upright. Its background is even stronger than many top-level cultivation forces sitting in Liangjiyuan. In Wuji Xianmen, the number of Yuanshan Daojun is the largest in the entire Phoenix Meteor realm. But what is strange is that there is no heavenly venerate transcending tribulation at the Promise Immortal sect. This time, Qin Daoxian is going to borrow the way from Tianyunzong to go to Wuji Xianmen, and then take the giant space teleportation formation of Wuji Xianmen to go to Liangjiyuan. This journey should be the longest journey Qin Daoxian has taken. Although his strength is hard to find an opponent among nascent soul cultivators, he can't help but feel a little uneasy. Brush. Qin Daoxian's figure appeared again, already in Jinnan Xianqing. Looking at the familiar and unfamiliar Jinnan Pass in front of him. Qin Daoxian's consciousness swept away and enveloped the entire immortal city. Such a move immediately attracted the attention of a Jindan cultivator in the teleportation formation of the Guardian space. Who is so arrogant dare? When the Jindan Xiutu saw Qin Daoxian's figure, he immediately lowered his head and said respectfully, "Meet Qin Jinjuan." Okay. Qin Daoxian looked at the Jindan cultivator of Qinyuan Jianzong in front of him, and recognized at a glance that this was one of the 6 Jindan cultivators who accompanied him on the expedition to recover Zenangwan. If Qin Daoxian remembers it well, this person seems to be surnamed Zhao. I haven't seen you for a few years, Daoyu Zhao. Don't come here without a lamb? No lamb. No lamb. The cultivator surnamed Zhao said repeatedly, I didn't expect that the true monarch still remembers the younger generation. Saying that, the monk surnamed Zhao looked a little excited. In his eyes, Qin Daoxian's later achievements were like myths. Especially recently, there has been a lot of uproar in Qinyuan Jianzong, and he and the suzerain are about to marry. Although he is also a disciple of Qinyuan sword sect, but as a comrade in arms who has fought side by side with Qin Daoxian, he does not reject the alliance between the Qin family and Qinyuan sword sect, let alone the marriage between Qin Daoxian and his suzerain. Because as a monk with the same cultivation level as Qin Daoxian back then, he knew too well how terrifying Qin Daoxian's talent was. How many years has it been since the recovery of Zenangwan? The other party is already Yuan Yingjinjuan. This kind of cultivation speed, I am afraid that it will take hundreds of years before the other party can become the heavenly lord of tribulation, right? How can such a talented monk not be worthy of his own suzerain? It seems that Qinyuan Jianzong has lost some of Wan Xinghai's ruling authority, but it has gained Qin Daoxian, the future superpowerhouse. No matter how this deal is calculated, it is worth it. Chat with the monk surnamed Zhao. Qin Daoxian asked casually, is this town Nangxianqing now under your control? After hearing this, the monk surnamed Zhao showed a strange look on his face. Don't you know, true monarch? Do not know what is this? Qin Daoxian felt a little inexplicable. After hesitating for a moment, the monk surnamed Zhao explained, now this immortal city in the south of the town is under the control of the young sect master. Qiyao? Qin Daoxian frowned. Qiyao recaptured Zenangwan in the past in order to gain military exploits so that she could successfully inherit the position of suzerain in the future. But now not only Zenangwan, but even the entire Izumo kingdom is in the possession of Qinyuan sword sect. Her young sect master still sits in this immortal city. Isn't she overkill? Seeing that Qin Daoxian showed a puzzled look. The cultivator surnamed Zhao said cautiously, since the news that you and the sect master are about to marry Jinjuan, the young sect master had a big fight with the sect master and later he came here in a fit of anger. Everyone in the sect is preaching. Qin Daoxian saw him hesitating, with a displeased look on his face and said, Zhao Dao, you said it bluntly. Yes, the cultivator surnamed Zhao hurriedly cupped his hands. Everyone in the sect is saying that it was you, Jinjuan, who robbed the young sect lord of the sect master's position, and she ran away in frustration. After finishing speaking, the monk surnamed Zhao lowered his head and said nothing. Thank you Daoyu Zhao for clarifying your doubts. Don't dare, the true monarch is serious. The monk surnamed Zhao saluted again and again. 7017K. Chapter 428. Jinan Xianqing. The backyard of the city lord's mansion. A maid in azure clothes moved lightly and quickly walked into the courtyard. In the backyard, a woman in white was sitting under an osmanthus tree, fiddling with the strings of the violin, but the sound of the violin was erratic under her fiddling, showing that the plucker's mind was not on the guqin at all. Sect master. The maid in blue walked to Qi Yao's side and called out in a low voice. Qi Yao didn't lift her head and asked softly, Are you gone? The blue-clothed maid nodded, Well, let's go. Cha. The strings suddenly broke, but Qi Yao didn't feel anything. Half an hour. Qi Yao just stood up slowly, she looked at the direction where Qin Daoxian left, and finally made up her mind. I've made up my mind, I'm going to Liangjiuan. Young sect master? The blue-clothed maid's face suddenly turned pale, she didn't understand why the young sect master would have such absurd thoughts. Liangjiuan has always been a taboo word for the monks of Fengyun realm. Few monks from Fengyun realm dare to take the initiative to go to Liangjiuan. If it weren't for the fact that Qinzuan City forced the cultivation forces above the first class in Fengyun realm, enough monks must be dispatched to Liangjiyuan to guard each year, and no one would want to go to that place. In the eyes of the high-level cultivators of Fengyun realm, although Liangjiyuan has some opportunities, compared with these ethereal opportunities, the danger of Liangjiyuan is much greater. Compared with the war that broke out between the two worlds, the sect war in the Fengyun world can only be regarded as a small fight at best. It is said that the war between Qinyuan Jianzong and Shenqing Dao League is already the most fierce battle in the battle between the forces of Fenjianji Zongmen. But in this war, how many nascent soul monks died from the beginning to the end? According to the statistics of the Qinyuan sword sect, in the battle between the two sects that lasted for hundreds of years, the total number of Yuaning true monarchs who died in the battle was only a few dozen, and less than 100. Generally speaking, as long as the monks on one side are willing to surrender, the other side will choose to accept it rather than kill them all. But if the Yuaning Jinjuan of the two sects were placed on the battlefield outside the two realms, it is estimated that they would not be enough for a small-scale offensive and defensive battle. Liangjiyuan is the real meat grinder for high-level monks. The high-level monks with power and status in the Fengyun realm are just a resource that can be consumed on the battlefield outside the two realms' abyss. In this situation, how many high-level monks from Fengyun realm dare to go to Liangjiyuan? In addition to the top-level power children who took root in Liangjiyuan, there are very few monks in Fengyun realm who are willing to take the initiative to guard Liangjiyuan. As for Jindan cultivators like Qi Yao, it is extremely rare to be willing to go to Liangjiyuan. Jindan cultivator can barely be called a high-level cultivator in the Fengyun realm, but can only be called cannon fodder in the battlefield outside the two realms' abyss. Facing the endless army of demons, ordinary Jindan cultivators may not even be able to turn a single wave out. In the courtyard, Qi Yao glanced at her maidservant, then glanced at the direction of Qinyuan Jianzong and said with a sad face, "There is nothing worth lingering on here, it's better to do my best for this world that gave birth to me and raised me. My last effort. Xiaolin, I've already figured it out so I don't need to persuade me." Looking at Qi Yao's resolute expression, the maid named Xiaolan opened her mouth, but she didn't say anything after all. Leave Jinan Xianqing. Qin Daoxian went all the way east, and continued to perform teleportation in the direction of Tianyinzong. After breaking through the nascent soul period, Qin Daoxuan's divine consciousness shrouded the area and transformed again. From the original more than 2,300 miles, it soared nearly 10 times to more than 20,000 miles. The strength of this kind of consciousness has already surpassed that of ordinary monks who have just broken through the nascent soul stage. Qin Daoxian knew that this was the result of his cultivation of the Divine Sea Chapter. If it weren't for the short time he had been cultivating the Divine Sea Chapter, his current strength of consciousness would probably be comparable to that of ordinary Yuanshan Daojun. Along the way, Qin Daoxian was in a frantic hurry. Feeling a little heavy, Qin Daoxian vaguely guessed the reason for the conflict between Qi Yao and Fei Qinxue. But in the face of this evil fate as a party, he could neither persuade nor make any unrealistic promises to Qi Yao. Simply he chose to escape and chose to ignore this close friend in Jinan Xianqing. But even though others escaped, the guilt in my heart could never be let go. Although he married concubine Qinxue, the main purpose was for the Chen family. But he did fail Luo Li and he also failed Qi Yao who had always had a deep-rooted love for him. Although he was affectionate towards Qi Yao and never made any promises, it did not mean that he could hurt each other so much. It is conceivable that Qin Daoxuan's marriage with concubine Qinxue has dealt a great blow to Qi Yao. My most respected master robbed my most beloved man. This kind of blow, I am afraid that any woman in the world will not be able to accept it. Feel sorry. Qin Daoxian whispered softly, and then his figure disappeared again. Tianyinzong. As a second-rate sect on the border of Xianyunzhu, Tianyinzong has always been on good terms with Qinyuan Jianzong. Although the last raid on the Shenqing Dao League, Tianyinzong, like the other two sects, was desperately dragging the Qinyuan Jianzong's hind legs, but these actions were carried out secretly on the surface. The two sides have maintained a fairly friendly relationship. Therefore, as soon as Qin Daoxian set foot on the giant immortal city 1000 formation city under the gate of Tianyinzong Mountain, he received the highest standard of reception. The suzerain of Tianyinzong personally led a group of nascent soul elders of Tianyinzong, lined up in the air to greet him. Viewed from a high altitude, the buildings in Thousand Array City are like a giant gossip formation, and this giant gossip formation can be divided into 1,000 formations. Therefore, this immortal city is also known as the Thousand Array City. Although the Thousand Array City is very simple compared to the Tianyinzong's Mountain Protection Formation and the Qinyuan Jianzong's Mountain Protection Formation. But as far as the Immortal City is concerned, this is already the Immortal City with the strongest formation defense among all the Immortal Cities that Qin Daoxian has seen. Even Jinnan Xianqing, which had shriveled him before, was not as good as the defensive formation of Thousand Formation City. Sect Master Zhou, stay safe. Over the Thousand Formation City, Qin Daoxuan's escape light stopped at a distance of about 100 meters from the sect master of Tianyinzong, and then thanked the other party. This time, Qin Xian thanked the Zhou sect master for borrowing the formation. Seeing Qin Daoxian, the color of amazement in the eyes of Tianyinzong sect master disappeared in a flash. It has only been a few years, and the other party has actually broken through to the nascent soul stage. At this moment, Sect Master Zhou of Tianyinzong couldn't help but think of the warning words that Yi Tianqi said to their three major sections. This child is the biggest worry of all sections. It's a pity, this subclimate has become. The sect master of Tianyinzong sighed inwardly, but his face did not show at all, instead he showed a warm and hospitable look. Coupled with his image of immortal style and bones, he looks like a master of Taoism. Fellow Daoist Qin is too polite. The sect master of Tianyinzong cupped his hands and said with a smile, last time we joined forces to break the ambition of the Shenqing Dao Alliance. Speaking of which, the two of us can be regarded as a comrade-in-arms friendship. In addition, Qinyuan Jianzong has always been on good terms with my Tianyinzong, so fellow Taoists must not be separated from this old man. Sect Master Zhou said that it was Qin who was outside. The two chatted and smiled at each other. As for the fact that the opponent sold his teammates in battle, Qin Daoxian thought it had never happened and never mentioned it. And the sect master of Tianyinzong also showed that it was as if the two really joined forces to defeat the enemy back then, and he almost didn't hang up with Qin Daoxian and reiterated their comrade-in-arms relationship. Thousand Array Immortal City in an immortal mansion. The guest of honor is seated. Qin Daoxian didn't care about greetings and asked directly, Zhou sect master, this trip to Wuji Xianmen is the first time for Qin to go to a place worth noting. The sect master of Tianyinzong pondered for a moment, then said, Wuji Xianmen is the first sect in the Phoenix Meteor Realm, occupying the most vast territory in the central province of Xianyun continent. Under his command there are many immortal kingdoms, and there are countless high-level monks. If it weren't for the fact that Wuji Xianmen didn't have the Heavenly Venerate, I'm afraid it would be one of the most powerful forces in Heavenly Venerate City. Hearing these words, Qin Daoxian suddenly showed a surprised expression. Originally in his heart, no matter how powerful Wuji Xianmen was, it was only a first-class sect in Fengyun realm. But listening to Tianyinzong sect master, it seems that this Wuji Xianmen is no less powerful than any top power except that there is no Tianzuan in charge. The reason why the other party was not classified as a top-level force was just the lack of a heavenly venerate transcending tribulation. Seeing the doubts on Qin Daoxuan's face, the sect master of Tianyinzong continued, because the Wuji Xianmen holds the only space teleportation formation in the Phoenix Meteor Realm that connects the Phoenix Meteor Realm and the two realms abyss. Therefore, the number of monks who go to Wuji Xianmen every day is extremely large, and among these monks, the ones with the lowest cultivation base are probably not under the nascent soul stage. Qin Daoxian had expected this. In the Phoenix Meteor Realm, those who dare to take the initiative to go to Liangjiyuan must at least have the cultivation base of nascent soul. Otherwise, in the battlefield outside the territory, it is very likely that they will become cannon fodder. Even an ordinary nascent soul cultivator is nothing more than an advanced cannon fodder on the battlefield outside the two realms abyss. My Tianyinzong and Wuji Xianmen are connected to this space teleportation formation. Speaking of which, it was a patriarch of the sect who went to Liangjiyuan and established it with Wuji Xianmen. Seemingly remembering something, Sect Master Zhou stroked his beard lightly and said with a smile, when the Qinyuan Sword sect rushed to aid Liangjiyuan, it was also our Tianyinzong space teleportation formation, but it's a pity. The sect master of Tianyinzong shook his head. Cough cough. Seeing that the sect master of Tianyinzong was making a good impression again, Qin Daoxian couldn't help coughing. Sect master Zhou immediately reacted and laughed loudly. Alas, when people are old they like to recall the past years. After speaking, sect master Zhou said again, Qin Daoyu goes to Wuji Xianmen, and there are not many things that need to be paid attention to. Cultivator going back and forth between Fengyun realm and Liangjiyuan. Therefore, Wuji Xianmen's management of external monks is very loose. As long as fellow Daoist Qin does not take the initiative to cause trouble, there will be basically no problems. Hearing these words, Qin Daoxian nodded slightly. He was worried that there were some taboos in this promise immortal sect and violated other people's taboos on other people's territory. This was no joke. Qin Daoxian is not yet arrogant enough to dare to spread wildness on the site of the first sect of Fengyun realm. After talking about Wuji Xianmin, the sect master of Tianyinzong looked at Qin Daoxian and said sincerely, "Daoyu Qin, this old man has an unkind request, please don't refuse." Heard. Qin Daoxian was non-committal, just quietly waiting for the next chapter of the Tianyinzong sect master. Zhou Zongzhu continued, "I know that after Qinyuan Jianzong defeated Xianqing Dao League, it was already the largest sect in a radius of tens of millions of miles. Now, with the help of Daoyu Qin, it is just around the corner for Qinyuan Jianzong to become a first-class sect. The old man hopes that if Qinyuan Jianzong can really become a first-class sect in the future, please also help me Tianyinzong for the sake of my two sects' friendship." Qin Daoxian did not expect that this time he simply borrowed from Tianyinzong, but inadvertently got Tianyinzong's surrender. But thinking about it carefully, Tianyinzong must have seen who will be the ruler of this borderland of Xianyun continent in the future. Sect Master Zhou's request was written down by Qin, but for the Qinyuan sword sect, Qin cannot be the master for the time being. When I can make the call in the future, Zhou's request will be fulfilled by Qin. Having said that, Qin Daoxian gave the other party a meaningful look. Seeing this look, the sect master of Tianyinzong immediately understood, and immediately stood up and bowed in response. Then this old man would like to thank Alliance Master Qin. Sect Master Zhou doesn't need to be too polite. Qin Daoxian helped each other, and immediately the two looked at each other and smiled. Accidentally obtained Tianyinzong's secret surrender, which Qin Daoxian never expected. Perhaps the sect master of Tianyinzong was stimulated by Qin Daoxian's terrifying talent and wanted to take a gamble with concubine Qin Shua. In short, Qin Daoxian was very satisfied with this trip to Tianyinzong. Although Tianyinzong only secretly surrendered, as long as Qin Daoxian has always shown this amazing talent, no, as long as Qin Daoxian can break through to the Yuanshan stage. The secret surrender of Tianyinzong at this time will turn into a swaggering surrender. There is nothing shameful about finding a second-rate sect as a backer for a second-rate sect. The disciples of Tianyinzong would not have any resistance. On the contrary, in Fengyun realm, many first-class sects simply do not look down on those second- and third-rate cultivation forces. Others are rushing to take refuge, and those first-class sects do not take it seriously. Just like Wuji Xianmen in the Fengyun world, I don't know how many second-rate sects want to take refuge in it. Even there are many first-class sects who want to take refuge in Wuji Xianmen as their affiliated forces. But the Promise Immortal sect couldn't take it seriously. So far, Wuji Xianmen has clearly recruited no more than 10 affiliated forces. For the most powerful first-class sect in the Fengyun world, there are simply too few affiliated forces. Even if it is the Qianyuan sword sect, there are also the major monster races of Wanxinghai as subsidiary forces. Although the affiliated forces of Qianyuan Jianzong are a bit insignificant, but that is because Qianyuan Jianzong was defeated in Wanxinghai, and has been trying hard to accumulate strength. Now Qianyuan Jianzong and Xianqing Daomen have completely defeated each other. If it wasn't for the ban issued by Tianzuan City, Qianyuan Jianzong would definitely destroy the Xianqing Dao League in one fell swoop. At that time, the surrounding cultivation forces will all be rushing to join the Qianyuan sword sect. This is the way of survival in the Phoenix Meteor world. There is nothing shameful or shameful. 7017K. Chapter 429. The Phoenix Meteor realm is vast, of which the Xianyun continent is the largest, and it is the center of the world. Xianyun continent is vast, with a radius of hundreds of billions of miles. On the Xianyun continent, there are many sects and families are rampant. Among the countless cultivation forces, Wuji Xianmen is the most powerful. The Wuji Xianmen sits on the fertile soil of the central state of Jianghu, with a vast territory and countless mortal kingdoms under its command. The surrounding forces facing the behemoth Wuji Xianmen all bow their heads and serve as ministers. The Zongmen headquarters of Wuji Xianmen was established in a country called Su Kingdom. Compared with the country of Izumo, which is located in the northwest corner, the country of Su does not know how many times more than the former in terms of territory and population. Compared with Su Kingdom, Izumo Kingdom is the smallest country, not worth mentioning. As for the more remote Wanxinghai, in the eyes of the people of Su, it is a wild place overseas, and it should be uninhabited. Kyoto, the capital of Su State. A white figure suddenly appeared from a large space teleportation formation. Walking out of the space teleportation formation, Qin Daoxian waited for the dizziness in his head to gradually disappear. The shock in Qin Daoxuan's heart could not be concealed. How far have I teleported here? Qin Daoxian was speechless in his heart. With his accomplishments in the laws of space, he would actually feel dizzy after taking a space teleportation array once, which shows how exaggerated the distance of this space teleportation is. Shaking his head, Qin Daoxian threw the distracting thoughts out of his mind, raised his head and looked at the scene in front of him. Compared with the immortal city he has seen before, the immortal city in front of him is not too surprising. The only thing that makes Qin Daoxian feel wrong is that he is here, with a sense of restraint all the time oppressing him. Qin Daoxian frowned and then secretly started the space law. What a strong forbidden space formation. Qin Daoxian was shocked. Generally speaking, it is understandable to set up a forbidden air formation in Xianqing, but the forbidden air formation in this immortal city not only prohibits the cultivator from flying, but also prohibits the cultivator from using space teleportation. In other words, in this immortal city, Qin Daoxian could not only fly, but also teleport. For a monk who is used to using teleportation to hurry and escape, this immortal city is simply a nightmare. No wonder he felt uncomfortable. Qin Daoxian just walked out of the range of the space teleportation array. A trail with a bun on his head and a jade hairpin inserted into it, trotted towards Qin Daoxuan's position. Qin Daoxian looked at it intently, and his heart couldn't help being horrified. Cultivator Jin Dan. In front of this trail, the Taoist age will never exceed 100, and it is actually a real person of Jin Dan. Just when Qin Daoxian was shocked, Xiao Dao had already walked up to Qin Daoxian and respectfully bowed to him, saying, "This true monarch is polite. Pin Dao is a disciple of Wuji Xianmin. I wonder what true monarch ordered?" Holding back the shock in his heart, Qin Daoxian said calmly, "You are being polite, fellow Daoist." Qin Daoxian cupped his hands. "This is the first time I have set foot in the Su country. I would like to ask my fellow Taoist to introduce me to the customs of the Su country." Hear this. There was no change in the little Taoist priest's face. Obviously, for Xiao Dao, who has been in charge of reception work in this teleportation array all the year round, he has seen too many unfamiliar true monarchs. True monarchs like Qin Daoxian, who came to Su for the first time, were always there every day. He has long been surprised. "True monarch, are you visiting Su country or going to Liangjiyuan?" Hearing this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help frowning. Is there any difference between the two? That's right, if the true monarch just came to Su country to travel, you can find a restaurant or immortal mansion to stay at will, but if you go to Liangjiyuan, you need to go to the city lord's mansion to register and line up. Registration queue? This is the first time Qin Daoxian has heard this familiar word since his practice in this world. In the last life, checking queues were very common. But in this world, due to the existence of formations and magical instruments, coupled with the powerful consciousness of monks, they can handle things very quickly, and there is very little time to register and queue. The little Taoist seemed to see the puzzled look on Qin Daoxuan's face and continued, "There is only one large space teleportation formation from Su country to Liangjiyuan, because every time it is activated, it requires a lot of resources. Therefore, unless there are special circumstances, this teleportation formation will only be activated every 5 years. Now, this teleportation formation has only been activated for 2 years since the last time." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian finally knew why he had to make an appointment in a space teleportation formation. According to this little Taoist priest, the space teleportation formation will be activated once every 5 years. If you don't make an appointment, Qin Daoxian will definitely not be able to sit. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian calmly took out a storage ring, handed it to the little Taoist priest and said, "Dare to ask friends, what is there to say about this registration queue?" The little Taoist priest took the storage ring handed over by Qin Daoxian, and his consciousness swept away, and a bright smile appeared on the originally indifferent face. "There's something to be said about it," the little Taoist smiled and said, "This space teleportation array from Su country to Liangjiyuan is said to be registered and queued, but in fact, if Taoist friends really go to queue, I am afraid that they will not be able to line up in this life." "Oh." Qin Daoxian raised his brows. The little Taoist continued, "If you can trust the poor Taoist can help introduce the elders who preside over this space teleportation array, but you must prepare a sum of money in advance." "I don't know how much I need to prepare next," Qin Daoxian said indifferently. The little Taoist reached out his hand quietly, gestured with 3 fingers and said, 300 powers of creation, heard." Qin Daoxian took a deep breath. "This dog is greedy for talent, it should be killed." This space teleportation formation in Su country is the only space teleportation formation connecting the Phoenix Meteor realm and the True Demon realm. There are not many high-level monks from Fengyun realm who rush to Liangjiyuan. People from Wuxia actually dared to fill their own pockets and beat the bones and marrow of these monks who rushed to Liangjiyuan. Such behavior is really disgusting. A small elder who oversees the space teleportation formation is so greedy. Peeking into the spot and seeing the leopard, it can be seen how corrupt the Wuxia men, which is known as the first sect of the Phoenix Meteor realm, has become corrupted. However, although Qin Daoxian was despised, he couldn't change anything. Half an hour. Qin Daoxian nodded, then I will trouble fellow Taoists. Good to say. A bright smile appeared on the little Taoist priest's face again. The capital of Su State. In a magnificent palace. A young monk with blue hair hanging down his shoulders and wearing a loose Taoist robe is sitting at the table, holding a jade fold in his hand, and his consciousness is immersed in it, and he is slowly checking it. Beside him, a grizzled, spirited old man stood quietly. Humph! With a cold snort, the bright light formation in the hall swayed violently, as if it would dissipate at any time. The old man's expression didn't change, as if he just snorted, not his young master but a stranger. Old Wu, you said that these untouchables of Sini religion, how come you can't kill them all? The old man surnamed Wu finally spoke at this time and said, Young master has imposed too much tax on Chishui kingdom, so it is common sense that Sini religion can take this opportunity to confuse the monks of Chishui kingdom. The old man surnamed Wu did not give face to the young master. He spoke succinctly and pointed to the pain point. Am taxing those untouchables too heavily? Hearing the old man's words, the young cultivator was even more angry. Who do these untouchables rely on to be able to practice peacefully in the Fengyun realm? It's not a big sect like my Wuxia men. If it weren't for us sitting in Liangjiyuan, the real monsters in the real demon world would have been raging in the Fengyun realm long ago, and they would not pay the tax when they wanted to. Hearing this, the old man shut up again. Glancing at the old man, the young cultivator closed the jade folder, rubbed his eyebrows and said, Old Wu, how are the resources for my trip to Liangjiyuan this time? It is about 145,000 less powerful than the planned resources, and 43 points of spirituality. Heard? The young cultivator stood up and muttered, The gap is huge. It seems that the formation will be opened after 3 years and I can't go. The old man surnamed Wu nodded. Liangjiyuan is extremely dangerous. If you are not prepared enough, even with the strength of the young master, there is a risk of falling. It is the right choice to take it easy. Hearing this, the young cultivator shook his head. Unfortunately, if I could borrow a pure yang immortal artifact from the Zhongmen Chuanbao Pavilion, it would be enough to burst into a strength comparable to that of a fifth-layer Taoist in the world. At that time, how can you use such a hard search for resources to create a Taoist bodyguard? Pure yang immortal artifact. Hearing this level of treasure, the old man surnamed Wu shook his head. Since the ancient Mahayana true immortals collectively ascended to the upper realm, the pure yang fairy artifacts left in this realm are basically in a state of only decreasing and not increasing. If you want to borrow immortal tools from Chuanbao Pavilion, unless you can break through to the fifth-layer realm of the world, young master. The fifth floor of the world. Hearing this, the young cultivator shook his head. If I can reach this state, I can directly become the first sequence heir of the sect master, so I don't need to borrow an immortal weapon. The old guys in the sect did not directly send immortals to me to protect the Tao. Hearing these words, the old man surnamed Wu fell silent again. The fifth floor of the world is a hurdle. After the cultivator's Tao realm breaks through to the world realm, he will encounter 2 thresholds. The first threshold is the 3rd level of the world realm. The second threshold is the 5th floor of the world. Generally speaking, the Yuanian cultivator broke through to the Yuanshan stage, and basically the Tao realm was at the level of the 1st and 2nd layers of the world realm. This is also the realm of the great Tao that ordinary Yuanshan Daojun can achieve. As for the 3rd layer of the world realm, even for Yuanshan Daojun, it is not an easy thing to break through. Once Yuanshan Daojun breaks through to the 3rd floor of the world, he can instantly become the mainstay of Yuanshan Daojun or the elite. The Yuanshan Daojun on the 1st and 2nd layers of the world realm, when facing the Daojun on the 3rd floor of the world realm, usually loses after 3 or 5 strokes. The gap between the two is huge. As for the 5th layer Daojun of the world realm, his strength will take a big step forward. Regardless of other external factors, the 3rd level Taoist of the world realm basically has no room for resistance after encountering the 5th layer Taoist of the world realm. Capture or kill, it's all in the opponent's mind. In the hall. just when the young monk was talking to the old man surnamed Wu. A female cultivator in the nascent soul stage walked in quickly. Linger. Seeing Yuanying female cultivator, the young cultivator stopped the discussion with Wu Lao, looked at the visitor with a smile and waved to her. The Yuanying female cultivator named Linger walked quickly to the young cultivator and sat directly on the other's lap, ignoring the existence of the old man next to her. The young cultivator put his arms around the waist of the Yuanying female cultivator, took a deep breath greedily between her hair and said, "Aren't you retreating? Why did you come to see me?" Heard. This female cultivator named Linger had a charming look on her brows. If Chen Daoxian was present, even if he could recognize it, this female cultivator named Linger was actually the same as the Xiling fairy he had rescued in Izumo before, and she also had a mysterious body of Jiuyin. With such a treasured body, it is no wonder that this young Taoist loves this Linger so much. "Young master, the slave family has good news to tell you." "Good news?" The young monk put Linger down gently. "What good news?" I saw Linger pursed her lips and smiled. Without speaking, she took out a dark and heavy piece of wood directly from the storage ring. 9 secluded soul tree. The young cultivator and elder Wu looked at each other with a look of surprise in their eyes. But soon the surprise was hidden by the young monk. He looked at the 9 nether-like soul wood floating in the air, and said indifferently, "Fellow Taoist is lucky to be able to live in the 9 nether soul tree with the cultivation base of nascent soul, and escape death." As death. The words fall. In the 9 secluded soul tree, a transparent figure suddenly appeared. It was Yi Tianqi, the leader of the Shenqing Dao Alliance, who abandoned Yin and fled that day. However, the appearance of the leader of the Shenqing Dao Alliance is a bit miserable now. Not only has the body in Yuanying been lost, but even the soul has suffered irreparable injuries. If he hadn't lived in the 9 nether soul cultivation wood, with his injuries, his soul would have been scattered long ago. Yi Tianqi, the leader of the Shenqing Dao Alliance, meet the seniors. Yi Tianqi respectfully bowed to the young monk. When the young monk saw this, his face was unmoved. He had never even heard of the so-called Shenqing Dao Alliance, but if he wanted to come to a force that could be the leader of a nascent soul cultivator, it was probably just a small second-rate force in some corner of Xianyun continent. For the young cultivator, this second-rate force, he only needs to move his mouth. He can send his subordinates to easily crush him, which is not worth mentioning at all. Seeing that the young cultivator was unmoved, Yi Tian was surprised. Reporting to the seniors, "The juniors are here to present treasures to the seniors." "Oh, a gift." The young monk chuckled. "Where's the treasure?" Yi Tianqi felt a chill in his heart and said bravely, "The treasure is not on me, but I know where the treasure is. With your strength, senior, it is easy to get the treasure." Hear this. The young cultivator lacked interest, with a trace of dissatisfaction on his face, looked at Linger and said, "Is this the trash you introduced?" Hearing this, Linger immediately shook the young monk's arm and said coquettishly, "Young master, calm down." Linger just saw that this person could actually travel from the battlefield outside the territory and return to the Fengyun realm, so she was curious to bring him over to the young master. Discerned. What? Who knew that the young cultivator was shocked when he heard this? He turned his head sharply and looked at Yi Tianqi. "Is what she said true? You drove the world across the battlefield outside the territory and you haven't died yet?" Thinking of his tragic experience during this period, Yi Tianqi nodded and said bitterly, "Yes, this junior is the one who controls the world, walks through the battlefield outside the territory, and then takes the space teleportation array to return to the Phoenix meteor realm." Sharp. The young monk gave him a thumbs up. 7017K. Chapter 430. Boom. While the two were talking, a roar suddenly sounded in the capital of Su Kingdom, and the entire immortal city trembled. Inside the hall, the young monk frowned. After a short period of time, a monk wearing black armor and a black mask suddenly appeared in the hall. Seeing the young cultivator in the golden robe, the black-armored cultivator immediately knelt on the ground and lowered his head. "Young master." "Xianyi, what's going on?" "It's a new dog." The black-armored monk lowered his head. "It's these scumbags again." The young cultivator became a little excited when he heard the word Zinniajao. He waved his hand suddenly, "Find them and then kill all these bastards." "Yes." After the black-armored cultivator finished speaking, his figure suddenly disappeared in the hall. On the side, Yi Tianqi looked at the scene in front of him, and his heart suddenly became even hotter. A dignified Yuanshan Daojun actually gave this golden-robed young cultivator such a big gift. It can be seen that this young cultivator's status in Wuxianmen is much higher than what Linger, the female cultivator who introduced him, said. Thinking of this, Yi Tianqi's eyes burst into an unprecedented light. Qinyuan Sword Sect. Feichen Snow. You are waiting. Yi Tianqi roared wildly in his heart. The capital of Su State. After leaving a communication talisman with Jindan Xiaodao of Wuxianmen, Qin Daoxian wandered around the fairy city alone. As the largest of the many kingdoms under the jurisdiction of Wuxianmen, Su Kingdom not only has a vast territory, but its internal atmosphere is much more open than Wanxinghai. Strolling in the capital of Su State, Qin Daoxian saw that the women were dressed more openly than Wanxinghai. Almost all the women were wearing a layer of translucent gauze, exposing large areas of snow-white skin. Qin Daoxian was walking on the street and there were even daring women. Seeing his handsome appearance, he secretly greeted him. Walked around for about an hour. Qin Daoxian found an inn responsible for the rental of Dongfu under the recommendation of a Zifu cultivator. Senior, this is Fenglai Inn, one of the 3 largest inns in the capital of Su country. As he said that, the Zifu cultivator who led the way suddenly lowered his voice and whispered, the owner of Fenglai Inn is the Situ family of the Su country. The Situ family is strong and absolutely trustworthy. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian nodded. He was born in Wanxinghai outside Xianyun continent. He had heard of Wuxianmen, but he had never heard of the so-called Situ family. In fact, it is not surprising that Xianyun continent is incomparably vast, let alone a cultivator family. It is a first-class sect, and there are a few people who have heard of it. Generally speaking, the so-called first-class forces only have a certain influence near their sphere of influence. Out of its sphere of influence, who knows who you are? Not to mention a small immortal family in Su country. Seeing the expression on Qin Daoxuan's face, he didn't care. The cultivator of Zifu hurriedly said in Qin Daoxuan's ear, Senior, this ancestor of the Situ family is a Taoist Yuanshin Daojun on the 5th floor of the world. Behind it, there is the great backer of Wuxianmen, not to mention in Su country, even in the entire Zhongzhou, no one dares to provoke Senior Yu. These remarks, for the Zifu cultivator in front of him, are also sincere words. It can be said that as a Xiangdao, this Zifu cultivator is already very qualified. Qin Daoxian is not someone who doesn't know what is good or bad. The cultivator of the Zifu before him can kindly remind him. Naturally, he is afraid that Qin Daoxian does not know the seriousness and offends the Situ family. You must know that every year there are monks from the outside world who travel to the country of Su, and after offending the powerful of the country of Su, they eventually lead to the example of no bones left. Thank you for reminding me. Qin Daoxian bowed his hands to the Zifu cultivator in front of him. It was probably the first time that the Zifu cultivator was treated so politely by a true monarch nascent soul. He immediately flushed with excitement and kept smirking. It's easy to talk, Senior is too polite. Saying that, the Zifu cultivator turned his body and stretched out his right hand towards Qin Daoxian. Senior, please. Qin Daoxian nodded. The two walked into the inn one after the other. Don't look at Fenglai Inn's small area in the capital of Su Kingdom, but entering the interior, Qin Daoxian found that the inside of this inn is actually a cave world with a large area. As soon as they entered the inn, a monk in a lavender costume flew towards Qin Daoxian and the two. Obviously this monk is the guy at the inn. Senior, welcome to Fenglai Inn. The visitor stopped in front of Qin Daoxian, and then saluted Qin Daoxian respectfully. Qin Daoxian swept his consciousness at will, and found that the other party's cultivation had actually reached the Purple Palace period. It is unimaginable in Wanxinghai that a dignified cultivator of Zifu actually works as a clerk in an inn. Although he was extremely surprised in his heart, Qin Daoxian showed no signs of strangeness on the surface. Senior, do you want to rent the cave or? Qin Daoxian said concisely, rent a cave. Hearing that Qin Daoxian was going to rent the cave, the Fenglai Inn guy's face became even more flattering. He bowed and said, Senior, the cave in my Fenglai Inn is divided into 5 grades. The first gear is called Lingyuan Secret Realm. In addition to abundant spiritual energy, this Lingyuan Secret Realm also has a spiritual well that can temper Dao soldiers. This spiritual well is incredible. It is rumored that every 100 years, a drop of spirituality is born. It is a rare treasure. Hearing the buddy brag about the secret realm of Lingyuan, the guide of Zifu who led Qin Daoxian to look for the inn, was a little blind and interrupted on the spot. Could it be that fellow Taoist bullied my parents to come to Su country for the first time? Whether the spiritual well of the spiritual source secret realm can give birth to spirituality, do you really think we don't know? Cough this. The Zifu period guy in front of him immediately felt a little embarrassed. He originally thought that he would meet a foreigner who didn't understand the market, but he did not expect to be two regular customers. Seeing that the two were regular customers, the buddy immediately put away the attitude of slaughtering customers and said, "Of course, the Lingyuan secret realm is good, but the rental price is also very high, and the annual rent is as high as 100 drops of the power of good fortune. In addition, the mysterious water secret realm in the second stage of my Feng Lai Yin is more suitable for the cultivation of the senior's nascent soul." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian was shocked. He said calmly, "Can you see my cultivation?" Senior is joking, of course the junior can't see the senior's cultivation. The Zifu period guy handed over his hands. It's just that the first time senior stepped into my inn, Feng Ling informed the next senior about his cultivation. Feng Ling. Qin Daoxian secretly memorized this new term. Seemingly seeing Qin Daoxian's doubts, the Zifu guide on the side hurriedly said, "Feng Ling is the Taoist soldier in Feng Lai Yin." This is the second time Qin Daoxian has heard the word Daobing, and he can't help but feel even more puzzled. But now that he is new here and he doesn't know everything, he plans to settle down first and then get to know everything. What's the price of mysterious water secret realm? Senior, the concentration of spiritual energy in the mysterious water secret realm is no less than that of the spiritual source secret realm. The only difference is that there is no spiritual well for tempering the Taoist soldiers, so only 10 drops of the power of good fortune can be rented for a year. 10 drops of the power of creation. Even with Qin Daoxian's wealth, he couldn't help but be speechless at this price. The Feng Lai Inn in the capital city of Su country does not use spiritual stones to calculate the charges, but directly uses the power of good fortune. It is really arrogant. If Qin Daoxian had not prepared before going out, he would not necessarily be able to live in such an inn. Qin Daoxian decisively took out a jade bottle from the storage ring, threw it at random and said, "I rent it for 4 years and here are 40 drops of the power of creation." Hearing this, the Zifu period guy in front of him didn't know that Qin Daoxian's trip was to go to Liangjiyuan. The expression on his face could not help but become more respectful. After taking the jade bottle, the Zifu guy handed another jade token to Qin Daoxian saying, "This is the jade talisman that controls the mysterious realm of Shenshui, please keep it, senior." Qin Daoxian took the jade talisman. The purple mansion continued, "Senior, please come with me." After that, he led the way for Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian followed with the guide. So, the three of them came to a small cave. The guy at Feng Lai Yin turned his head, looked at Qin Daoxian and the two and said, "This is the mysterious realm of Shenshui, so the junior will not disturb the senior to rest." Having said that, he cupped his hands towards Qin Daoxian, and then turned into a flash of light and left. Qin Daoxian watched the other party leave, turned his head with a faint smile on his face, glanced at the guide he randomly invited and said, "Fellow Taoist would like to come in for a chat." Along the way, this Zifu period guide worked so hard for so long, just for Qin Daoxian's words, he immediately nodded and said, "Yes. The junior is willing." Seeing this, Qin Daoxian nodded, manipulated the jade talisman to open the formation of the mysterious realm of Shenshui, and then stepped in first. The guide of Zifuki did not dare to delay, he gritted his teeth and walked in after him. Silently following behind Qin Daoxian, the Zifu period guide said nothing. Qin Daoxian did not speak, but just looked at the arrangement in the mysterious territory of Shenshui. The internal space of this mysterious realm is quite large. Qin Daoxian estimates that it is even larger than his fairy mansion on Jianghu Island, covering an area of more than hundreds of thousands of square meters. More importantly, the concentration of spiritual energy in this mysterious secret territory is very abundant, although there is no spiritual veins here. However, Qin Daoxian could sense that there has been aura constantly replenishing it from the outside world, so that the concentration of aura here is almost comparable to that of the fifth-order spiritual meridian, which is completely enough for a nascent soul cultivator to practice. After visiting the mysterious realm of Shenshui, Qin Daoxian found a palace in the secret territory and pushed the door in. The interior decoration of the palace is complete and luxurious. However, Qin Daoxian is not someone who attaches great importance to enjoyment, and he turns a blind eye to all these things. Casually walked to a chair in the hall and sat down. Qin Daoxian looked at the Zifu cultivator standing in front of him, and this was the first time he took a serious look at the other party. The cultivator of the purple mansion in front of him was wearing a gray and linen shirt, showing off his muscular arms, and looking at his face, he looked like a guy in his 20s. However, cultivators cannot judge their age by their appearance, and Qin Daoxian knows this. The Zifu cultivator in front of him has a young face, and there are two possibilities. One is that the other party established the foundation earlier, and has the skills to reside there. The second is that the other party has taken magic pills such as Zhuyan pill. But Qin Daoxian prefers the first one because he just used his spiritual sense to quietly check the other party's spiritual roots, and he found that the Zifu cultivator in front of him was actually a Tianlingzhen cultivator. Although Tianlingzhen cultivator is slightly inferior to some cultivators with special spiritual bodies. But looking at all the cultivators, they are also top-notch. A Tianling root cultivator, if the resources are sufficient, the nascent soul stage would not dare to say, and there is still a certain degree of confidence in breaking through the golden core stage. As for the nascent soul stage and the nascent soul stage in the future, it is basically not determined by the quality of the spiritual root alone, but to a greater extent, it depends on various factors such as the cultivator's chance, comprehension, and xinxing. At most, Lingzhen can only help cultivators to reach the Purple Palace period, and the further back they go, the less influence Lingzhen has on cultivators. For Qin Daoxian today, how does the speed of refining spiritual energy in a mere area affect him? With Qin Daoxuan's Dao realm, if he doesn't consider erysipelas, he can even eat the elixir as a meal. This kind of cultivation condition also considers what spiritual roots are not spiritual roots. Even Qin Daoxian disliked the fact that ordinary spiritual pills were too slow to improve their cultivation. This time he went to Liangjiyuan to find an alchemist who could refine Xingyuan pills and help him refine them. As long as he takes the Saint Yuan Dan with his Dao realm, he can instantly raise his cultivation base to the peak of Yuaning. For Qin Daoxian, what is the significance of the so-called spiritual roots? Being scrutinized by a powerful nascent soul cultivator like Qin Daoxian, the Zifu cultivator in front of him was under great pressure, and before he knew it, sweat slipped down his temples. Half an hour. Qin Daoxian finally said, "What's your name?" Hearing this, the young and sturdy cultivator of Zifu heaved a sigh of relief, bowed and said, "I tell the seniors the junior's surname is Wu and his name is Mingxiu." "Wu Mingxiu," Qin Daoxian nodded. "Come on the way today you reminded me repeatedly, not just for that little guide fee, right?" "Senior Ming Jian." The Zifu cultivator named Wu Mingxiu immediately knelt down and kowtowed. Junior asked Senior to bring Junior to Liangjiyuan. This time Qin Daoxian was completely shocked. "Are you going to the Two Realms?" Qin Daoxian frowned. A place like Liangjiyuan, even for him, is an extremely dangerous place. The Zifu cultivator in front of him is only in the middle stage of Zifu, and his strength is not even comparable to Qin Fuxing. What is the difference between him going to Liangjiyuan and seeking his own death? Da-da-da. Qin Daoxian tapped the table lightly and said slowly, "Give me a reason." "Rescue." Wu Mingxiu raised his head. "The younger generation needs a treasure in the ruins of the true immortal world to save the life of the younger generation's beloved." Facing Qin Daoxuan's gaze, Wu Mingxiu looked at him without giving up. In this situation, anyone who sees it can't help but give a thumbs up to this most affectionate man. But Qin Daoxian didn't believe it at all. As for the reason, this Wu Mingxiu's actions are too reckless, but judging from his performance along the way, this person is also a very delicate person. Such a contradictory move made Qin Daoxian have to doubt. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian glanced at the other party with his divine sense again, and it was indeed the middle period of Zifu. Da-da-da. Qin Daoxian tapped on the table again and pondered. 7017K. Chapter 431. Going to Liangjiyuan is expensive. Are you sure you can afford it? Qin Daoxian looked at the Zifu period monk named Wu Mingxiu in front of him and said slowly, "Senior." Wu Mingxiu opened his mouth and was about to speak. Suddenly the ground shook, and the mysterious realm of Shenshui trembled violently. What happened? Qin Daoxian stood up abruptly. He ignored Wu Mingxiu, and with a flash, he rushed out of the mysterious realm of Shenshui. As soon as he flew out of the mysterious realm of Shenshui, Qin Daoxian discovered the Zifu period guy who had entertained him before. The Zifuki guy who was appeasing the guests of Fenglai and saw Qin Daoxian and immediately greeted Qin Daoxian. He bowed and saluted. The inn's poor hospitality has surprised the seniors. Qin Daoxian didn't mean to blame the other party but just asked, "What's going on? Is the capital of Su country still so unstable?" Although the outbreak just lasted only for a moment, Qin Daoxian clearly felt that it was a Yuanshan Daojun who shot. Normally, Yuanshan Daojun took action and completely destroyed an immortal city. The reason why the capital of Su Kingdom is so strong is due to the terrifying forbidden air formation in this immortal city. This access control air formation not only limits the speed of the cultivators flying and the ability to perform space teleportation, but also limits the cultivator's attack power. As long as the cultivator's attack power does not exceed the upper limit of the forbidden space, it will not cause destructive damage to this immortal city. Not to mention directly blowing up an immortal city like Qin Daoshan fought against the Palace Master Yue of Shenqingdao League before. This kind of thing is almost impossible to happen in the capital of Su country. But in any case, a primordial spirit Dao Jun directly shot in the capital of Su Kingdom, which is undoubtedly a great challenge to Wuji Xianmen. Who has such courage? The Zifuki guy at Fenglai heard Qin Daoxuan's question and quickly replied, Senior, it was the rebels of Sini religion who made trouble in the city and disturbed the senior. New doctrine? Seeing the doubts on Qin Daoxuan's face, Zifuki's clerk explained, Sini religion is an evil organization spontaneously organized by scattered cultivators within the jurisdiction of Wuji Xianmen. The purpose of this evil organization is to overthrow the rule of Wuji Xianmen, and let the scattered cultivators in the whole central state equally share the spiritual veins and resources of Wuji Xianmen. Isn't this crazy? With that said, a look of disdain appeared on the face of this Zifu period guy. Rebels? A clear look appeared on Qin Daoxuan's face. Although it took less than a day to come to the capital of Su Kingdom, Qin Daoxian could feel that the degree of oppression of the scattered cultivators here was even greater than that of Wanxinghai. As a traveler, when Qin Daoxian didn't have the golden scriptures, he felt that the path of cultivation was dark. Not to mention other loose repairs. Their situation will only be more difficult than Qin Daoxian. In this world, scattered cultivators accounted for more than 90%, which was the largest group of cultivators. However, the resources that the loose cultivators have are the least. In the long run, the conflict broke out and Qin Daoxian was not surprised at all. However, in Qin Daoxuan's view, the possibility that this new doctrine will succeed is infinitely close to zero. The reason is simple. Fengyun world is a world of immortal cultivation. In other words, it is a world where great power is attributed to itself. The more great power is attributed to oneself, the more solidified the class of the world is, which is determined by human nature. In the Phoenix Meteor world, sects and clans occupy most of the resources. And because it occupies most of the resources, the sect and family can cultivate many more top-level powerhouses than the loose cultivator group. In the face of these top powerhouses, what do loose cultivators do to confront them? It's not that there are no strong people in the loose cultivators, but compared to the sect and the immortal family, the proportion of top strong people born in the loose cultivators is too low. And once a top powerhouse is born, it will be bribed by some sects and families with positions such as elder kitching. Without these top powerhouses from loose cultivators who are the masters of the loose cultivators are like a piece of loose sand. No matter how many they are, they cannot pose any threat to the sect and the cultivator family. Seeing the Zifu period guy in front of him spitting out the new doctrine, Qin Daoxian suddenly said, Which lifetime brother are you from the Situ family? Ah. Hearing this, Zifuki's face suddenly froze and then, a touch of embarrassment appeared on his face. Junior. The junior is not a member of the Situ family yet, no. However, the junior is now pursuing a young lady from the Situ family, and I believe that he will soon be able to enter the gate of the Situ family. The Zifu period guy is plausible. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian turned his head away and stopped looking at him. The Zifu period guy also seemed to feel that he was being looked down upon, bowed his head and bowed his hands to Qin Daoxian, and said in a loud voice, Senior, if you have something to do with this junior, you will retire first. After that, it turned into a flash of light and disappeared in front of Qin Daoxian. Glancing at the back of this Zifu period guy who didn't even know his name, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but sigh deeply. He suddenly remembered a sentence from a previous life: whenever a slave stood up to oppose slavery, the first one to stand up against it was not the slave owner, but the slave. The riots come quickly and subside quickly. Soon, this immortal city returned to calm, as if the attack just now was not initiated by Yuanshin Daojun, but a temporary intention of a thief. Qin Daoxian didn't know what the fate of the Yuanshin Daojun would be, but he couldn't and shouldn't manage these things. Return to the mysterious water realm. Entering the hall of the secret realm, Qin Daoxian found that Wu Mingxiu was still kneeling in the hall, as if the attack just now had nothing to do with him. Qin Daoxian said thoughtfully, "Get up first." There was a hint of hesitation on Wu Mingxiu's tall nose and wide mouth, but soon he stood up. It's just that his attitude is still firm and he looks like Qin Daoxian doesn't agree and he won't leave. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian smiled and said, You are so courageous, how dare you use this attitude to force a true monarch nascent soul who is 2 realms higher than you? Aren't you afraid of death? Who knows? Wu Mingxiu raised his head and said, if I can't go to Liangjiuan and find treasures to save my Taoist companion's life, what's the point of living alone? You are infatuated. Qin Daoxian shook his head, but as I said before, going to Liangjiuan costs a lot of money. You can't afford it. You can't expect me to pay for it for you, right? Hearing this, Wu Mingxiu gritted his teeth, turned his heart, took out a jade talisman from the storage ring, and handed it to Qin Daoxian. Senior, please see, this is a treasure I accidentally acquired called the Heavenly Secret Talisman, but... As everyone knows, before the other party can finish his words, Qin Daoxian took this talisman into his hand. Another celestial talisman. Qin Daoxian already had a Heavenly Secret Talisman in his hand, but the Heavenly Secret Talisman, which was originally damaged, was repaired by him with a lot of power of creation. Now, he actually found a second Heavenly Secret Talisman. According to the information revealed by the Heavenly Secret Talisman, this is one of the components of a 7th-order magic weapon. Qin Daoxian didn't even know how many pieces of this complete 7th-order magic weapon were. He only knew that this 7th-order magic weapon was left by Venerable Tianji of the Taiyin sect, and it was very precious. Qin Daoxian looked at the Heavenly Secret Talisman in his hand, and the light in his eyes was uncertain. A long time. He then nodded slowly to the cultivator named Wu Xiaoming and said, okay, the deal. Thank you, Senior. Wu Xiaoming immediately showed an ecstatic expression. In the past 3 years, you have been practicing in the side hall, and you are not allowed to go out for no reason. Also, when I practice, I hate outsiders to disturb me. If there is no important matter, you must not disturb me. Junior respectfully abides by the elder's law. Wu Xiaoming nodded. He waved his hand and asked the other party to step back. In the hall, only Qin Daoxian was left. Gently rubbing the Heavenly Secret Talisman in his hand, Qin Daoxian dared to conclude that there was definitely something wrong with this cultivator named Wu Xiaoming. Previously, Qin Daoxian was looking for a guide at random, which was also planned by the other party and took the initiative to come together. Perhaps, the moment Qin Daoxian stepped into the capital of Su Kingdom, he was already targeted by the other party. But why was the other party staring at him? Suddenly, Qin Daoxian set his eyes on this secret talisman again, and gradually got the answer in his heart. Interesting. A smile appeared on the corner of Qin Daoxian's mouth. I'll go out and you'll practice here for the time being. After saying that, Qin Daoxian ignored Wu Ziyuming's reaction, and with a flash of light, he flew out of the mysterious realm of Xianshui. Get out of the secret realm. Qin Daoxian found the Zifu period guy who was in charge of receiving him. Perhaps it was because Qin Daoxian had despised him before, and seeing Qin Daoxian again, this Zifu period guy's face was a little unsightly. It's just because of Qin Daoxian's cultivation that this Zifu period guy didn't dare to attack. He bowed his body and said, I've seen Senior. Qin Daoxian didn't care about the other party's face and asked, let me ask you, is there a place that sells books and jade slips in this city? Books? The Zifu period guy was slightly taken aback. Does the Senior want to buy a practice method? If you want to buy a practice method, there is the largest shop in the city called Chuanbao Pavilion. Seniors can go there and have a look. Thank you. After Qin Daoxian said that, he threw a bottle of spirit pills, and then left the Fenglai Inn with the gratitude of the other party. Walking out of the Fenglai Inn, Qin Daoxian walked in the direction of the Chuanbao Pavilion that the man said. The capital of Su State occupies a very large area. Due to the restrictions of the Forbidden Air Formation, flying is not allowed in the city, and all cultivators have to rely on a magic weapon called the escape shuttle to travel. According to the tip of the staff at Fenglai Inn before leaving, Qin Daoxian held the Formation Jade Talisman in the mysterious realm of Xianshui, and summoned an escape shuttle. Less than half a cup of tea, an empty shuttle appeared in front of Qin Daoxian. From the outside, it seems that this escape shuttle can only accommodate one person. But as Qin Daoxian opened the hatch of the escape shuttle and stepped into it, he found that the space inside was very spacious, not to mention one person, even more than 100 people. Qin Daoxian was not surprised by the use of space magic. This level of magic, let alone Wuji Xianmen, even if the Qin family's Magical Research Institute wants to develop a similar one, it will not take too much. The only thing that shocked Qin Daoxian was that after the escaping shuttle flew over the capital of Su country, looking around, countless escaping shuttles were flying over the capital of Su country. But the strange thing is that so many flying instruments were crowded over the capital of Su kingdom, but there was no collision incident. No wonder the capital of Su country has to set up a no-air formation. If there is no no-air formation, so many cultivators will be crowded together and fly in the light. It is estimated that every day the light hits, I don't know how many times it will happen. Qin Daoxian sat in the escape shuttle and muttered, "Don't think that if the cultivator has spiritual consciousness, there will be no air disaster." There were some immortal cities in Wanxinghai that did not set up a forbidden air formation. As a result, a large-scale battle was triggered because of the collision of the cultivators. So much so that the immortal city was finally turned into ruins. Since then, the major immortal cities in Wanxinghai will basically have forbidden space formations, and the difference is only in the strength of forbidden formations. It's just that Qin Daoxian has never seen a forbidden air formation like Zhus capital city, which prohibits all cultivators from flying. Generally speaking, Xiancheng's air forbidden formations prohibit low-level monks from flying in the sky, but they turn a blind eye to the escape of high-level monks. At this point, Su Guo is equally treated. And in Wanxinghai, after the cultivator was banned from flying, most of the immortal cities would use cloud-treading beasts to travel. The cloud-treading beast is a first-order monster raised by monks. Its temperament is gentle and its endurance is extremely strong, and it is extremely stable when it carries the vehicle. Therefore it is widely praised by monk Wanxinghai. But in the capital of Su State, Qin Daoxian didn't even see the shadow of a beast car that treads clouds. In this city before, he could only see densely packed pedestrians and a dazzling array of shops on both sides of the street. As for the means of transportation, Qin Daoxian didn't see a single one. But now he saw it. The flying shuttle in the high altitude of the capital city of Feishu will disappear after taking off, so that the pedestrians below will not feel any depression. However, Qin Daoxian flew high in the sky on the escaping shuttle, but he could see countless escaping shuttles flying along the dense and empty route. See this scene. If he ignores the classical architectural style of the capital of the Su kingdom and the simple appearance of the escaping shuttle, Qin Daoxian suspects that he has come to a sci-fi city. One escaping shuttle is not worth mentioning, but with so many escaping shuttles, it can safely shuttle over the fairy city and send each cultivator to the designated place. The strength of this refining tool. Qin Daoxian shook his head. He knew in his heart that even if the Qin family's Magical Instrument Research Institute and the Qinyuan Jianzhong's Artifact Refining Hall joined forces, it would be far from being able to do it. If you use sci-fi rhetoric, this scene is completely intelligent. But Qin Daoxian was in the world of cultivation, so he didn't know how to describe the scene in front of him. Thoughts are surging. Dang Kong Shua soon took Qin Daoxian to the destination of his trip, Chuanbao Pavilion. Rumor has it that the Chuanbao Pavilion in the capital of Su Kingdom was opened by Wuji Xianmen. There are countless treasures in it, and even the legendary Pure Yang Immortal artifact can be bought in the Chuanbao Pavilion, as long as you can afford the price. Qin Daoxian scoffed at this. In his opinion, no matter how prosperous the Chuanbao Pavilion is, it will not sell the Pure Yang Immortal artifact. You must know that the Pure Yang Fairy artifact that survived in the Phoenix Meteor realm was all left by the Mahayana True Immortals who flew up to the upper realm in the ancient times. These immortal artifacts will only decrease and will not increase again. It can be said that one less is used. Such a precious treasure, can Chuanbao Pavilion be willing to sell it? It's just a gimmick. 7017K. Chapter 432. Get off the escaping shuttle. Qin Daoxian looked at the building in front of him, which covers an area of only tens of thousands of square meters, the Chuanbao Pavilion. From the outside, this building is only 3 stories high. But Qin Daoxian knew that its interior must be the same as the Feng Lion, and it was also unique. In fact, in the capital of Su State, the slightly larger shops have a small cave inside. As the place closest to Liangjiyuan in Phoenix Meteor Realm, the Jiyuan pearls, which are rarely seen in the outside world, are almost overflowing here. The cave world is naturally not worth mentioning. Without thinking too much, Qin Daoxian strode into the Chuanbao Pavilion. Entering the Chuanbao Pavilion as expected, there is a huge cave inside. Qin Daoxian tried his best, but he couldn't see the edge of this cave. Unlike the interior of Feng Lian, the reception staff in this Chuanbao Pavilion seemed rather lazy. Qin Daoxian has been in for a long time, but he can hardly see a person who came to entertain him, if the old man sleeping on the desk was the receptionist. Looking around, Qin Daoxian was sure that the old man was the only one nearby. Helplessly walked towards the other side. Cough cough. Qin Daoxian walked to the other side and stood still, coughing hard. What? The old man was awakened by Qin Daoxian's cough, rubbed his sleepy eyes and said, Who is it? Immediately the old man saw Qin Daoxuan's appearance clearly, and threw a sign, "Go to the second floor by yourself." Say it. The old man fell asleep on the table again. Qin Daoxian took over the wooden sign with a rough appearance and immersed in his divine sense. The next moment, a large amount of information poured into his sea of consciousness. It turned out that the Taoist soldiers here were responsible for everything in the Chuanbao Pavilion. The old man sitting in front of the gate is the only human race monk in this treasure pavilion, and the other party's cultivation base is not high, just like Qin Daoxian, only in the Yuanning period. Dao soldiers. Qin Daoxian heard this title again. In Wan Xinghai he had never heard of Dao soldiers, only puppets. Just don't know what is the difference between the two. After thinking about it, Qin Daoxian immediately issued an instruction to him according to the prompt information in the wooden sign. As this order was issued, soon, a fairy dressed in neon clothes flew towards him on a fairy cloud. Riding the clouds and driving the fog? Qin Daoxian looked at the female cultivator flying towards him, his consciousness swept away slightly and then shook his head. It turned out to be a cloud-shaped magic weapon. However, as soon as this Nishang female cultivator appeared on the stage, Chuanbao Pavilion's grade instantly rose. The female cultivator in Nishang flew in front of Qin Daoxian, and the clouds under her feet dissipated in an instant. Immediately she bowed to Qin Daoxian. "I have seen fellow Taoist." When Qin Daoxian saw this he immediately bowed his hands to it and said, "The fairy is polite. I don't know if you come to my Chuanbao Pavilion, what do you need?" Hearing this, Qin Daoxuan's mind moved slightly. "I've heard about the name of Sugua Chuanbao Pavilion for a long time. I don't know what treasures are sold in your pavilion?" Hearing this, Fairy Nishang smiled slightly. "Is it your first time to come to my Chuanbao Pavilion?" Qin Daoxian did not shy away and nodded directly. "Those who have come to my Chuanbao Pavilion know that there is no business in the world that my Chuanbao Pavilion does not do." Oh. It was the first time that Qin Daoxian heard someone speak in such a loud tone. Could it be that behind this Chuanbao Pavilion, which top force is not able to sit in the seat? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian asked tentatively, "Then, do you have any information on the heavenly venerate transcending tribulation?" "Have." Nishang female cultivator nodded and said with a smile, "Don't say it's the information of the heavenly venerate, it is the information of the demon court. As long as the Taoist friends can afford the price, I can get the treasure pavilion for the Taoist friends." Hiss. Hearing this, Qin Daoxian immediately took a deep breath. For the first time, he discovered that perhaps the Fengyun realm was not as vulnerable to the true demon realm as he imagined. Right. If Fengyun realm is really vulnerable, the world demons have already raged in Fengyun realm, how can Fengyun realm be so peaceful? Suddenly, Qin Daoxian thought of something. Then, can you Chuanbao Pavilion invite high-level alchemists to help refine a medicinal pill? Sure. Fairy Nishang nodded. "I don't know if you will produce the medicinal materials by yourself, or if I will produce the medicinal materials from the Chuanbao Pavilion." Hearing this, Qin Daoxian said in surprise, "Don't you ask the fairy what kind of medicinal pill I want to refine? No matter what kind of medicinal pill it is, as long as it is available in the Phoenix Meteor realm, and as long as the Taoist friends can afford the price, my Chuanbao Pavilion can refine them for the Taoist friends." Fairy Nishang still had a faint smile on her face. Qin Daoxian did not hesitate and immediately took out a cyan and a red Xingyuan fruit from the storage ring, handed them over to the other party and said, "I want to refine Shengyuandan, but I don't know how much your pavilion is asking." Fairy Nishang took the 2 Saint Yuan fruits, looked at them and said, "Although these 2 Saint Yuan fruits are well preserved, they should not be too short, at least 1,000 years. If you want to refine the words of Xingyuan Dan, whether it is efficacy or quantity, it may not be satisfactory, so fellow Taoists must be prepared." Qin Daoxian nodded. "I know, the fairy just finds someone to refine it." "It is good." Fairy Nishang nodded and said, "To refine this 30-year-old Saint Yuan fruit into a 4th order Saint Yuan Dan, 17 kinds of auxiliary elixir are needed, plus the cost of the alchemist's shot. The Taoist friend needs to pay me 300 drops. The power of creation. As for this red Saint Yuan fruit." The expression on Fairy Nishang's face became solemn. 300-year-old Xingyuan fruit is already a relatively precious treasure, and in terms of value, it is almost comparable to a 6th-rank high-grade magic weapon. To refine it into Xingyuan Dan, you need to prepare 23 kinds of auxiliary elixir, plus the alchemist's shot fee. You have to charge you 1,000 drops of the power of good fortune. So expensive? Qin Daoxian was speechless. 1,300 drops of the power of good fortune is completely enough to raise a magic weapon from the 5th to the 6th, and it is even more than enough. In other words, to refine Xing Yuan Dan, Qin Daoxian had to smash into a 6th-order magic weapon on the premise of producing Xing Yuan fruit. Qin Daoxian didn't have a few of the 6th-order instruments in total. How can you not feel distressed if you pay for it like this? But thinking of the treasures in his own cave artifact, Qin Daoxian's heart throbbed a little better. Seeing that Qin Daoxian thought it was expensive, Fairy Nishang didn't argue, but just smiled and said, "Have you considered it, fellow Taoist?" "It is good." Qin Daoxian nodded. "However, I can't bring out so much power of creation for the time being. Can you give me some grace? It's good to say that it will take some time to refine the Xingyuan pill. Taoist friends can pay the deposit first, and wait for the Taoist friends to raise the balance before taking the Xingyuan pill." Hearing such a thoughtful arrangement, Qin Daoxian didn't know what to say. "On the day I became Dan, I needed to observe it on the spot." "It's natural." Fairy Nishang readily agreed. After all, refining Xingyuan Dan is no trivial matter. Although Chuanbao Pavilion is very famous, Qin Daoxian also has to prevent the phenomenon of alchemy masters' greed for ink. Negotiate the details of cooperation. Qin Daoxian took out 650 drops of the power of creation from the storage ring with a heartache as a deposit. After disposing of the refining of Xing Yuan Dan, Qin Daoxian suddenly felt a sense of enlightenment. Originally planned to go to Liangjiyuan to find an alchemist to refine Xing Yuan pill, but it turned out that he did not need to go to Liangjiyuan. Only in the capital of Su country, there was a force capable of refining Xing Yuan pill. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but feel relieved. But when Qin Daoxian returned to the mysterious realm of Xianshui, the expression on his face changed slightly. Someone came. Qin Daoxian immediately took out the array plate of the 9 palaces array. I saw his hand pinch the spirit formula and tap it on the formation plate. Next moment, an array of flags arranged in the entire mysterious realm of Xianshui suddenly appeared and flew towards him quickly. Looking at the array flag floating around the array, Qin Daoxian returned to the hall with a gloomy expression. Consciousness swept away. In the side hall, Wu Mingxiu sat on the futon and meditated quietly as if nothing had happened. Apart from him, Qin Daoxian did not find any trace of anyone. "Play hide and seek with me?" Qin Daoxian smiled lightly. Immediately he set up a 9-gong formation in the main hall, took out a gourd-shaped cave artifact, and then flashed into the gourd's cave. Entering the gourd cave, Qin Daoxian finally breathed a sigh of relief. With the protection of the 7th order array of the 9 palaces array, even if Yuan Shen Daojun attacks, he can withstand it for a while. What Qin Daoxian should be concerned about now is not what tricks Wu Mingxiu is playing. What he cares about is how to solve the problem of the power of creation. Before setting off, Qin Daoxian asked Qin Daochu to find the Qinyuan Sword Sect's refining hall and help refine 5 greenwood cauldrons. But now it seems that the number of Qingmu Ding is far from enough. The 5 greenwood cauldrons can produce 1,825 drops of the power of good fortune in 1 year. Sounds like that's quite a lot. But the power of creation he needs next is not a drop or 2, nor a few thousand drops, but 100,000 drops. When he got the heavenly secret talisman by chance, Qin Daoxian only regarded it as one of the components of a 7th order magic weapon, and did not pay much attention to it. Although this treasure has the function of detecting fortune and good luck, the higher the cultivator's cultivation, the stronger the ability of mental early warning. The so-called fortune-telling of the celestial talisman means little to high-level cultivators. But this time Qin Daoxian was approached by someone, and the other party also sent the heavenly secret talisman to his hands, which made him pay attention to this thing all of a sudden. As for the coincidence, Qin Daoxian didn't believe it at all. He believed more that it was a premeditated calculation. In any case, he had to get the information of the heavenly secret talisman in order to know what the calculation behind it was. Otherwise, dreaming here will only get you nothing. As for the information of the heavenly secret talisman, Chuanbao Pavilion is asking for 100,000 drops of the power of creation. Why don't they go grab it? When Qin Daoxian thought of this, he felt an incomparable headache. That is 100,000 drops of the power of good fortune, and the 7th rank high-grade magic weapon is not so precious. Qin Daoxian did not know how much fortune Jiang Taiyuan expended in order to refine the 9 palaces array. But that was the result of countless years of accumulation in Jiang's family. Moreover, the Qingmu Ding before the Jiang family was not complete, and the power of creation that could be produced in 1 year was far less than 365 drops. Coupled with the power of Qingmu Ding's production and creation, it consumes 10 times more than the refining of nascent soul true monarch. Even if the Jiang family wanted to extract 100,000 drops of the power of good fortune, they could not afford the spirit stone. Therefore, the value of 100,000 drops of the power of good fortune must be above the 7th order magic weapon, at least above the value of the 9 palace array. What kind of intelligence is it that is so valuable? Qin Daoxian frowned deeply. Forget it, don't think about it, let's take a look at this Taoist information first. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian took out a jade slip from the storage ring. It was the Taoist information and refining method that Chuanbao Pavilion gave him for free. Sure enough, it's as I guessed. After simply reading the contents of the jade slip, Qin Daoxian knew why Chuanbao Pavilion did not charge for the information and refining methods of Taoist soldiers. 7,017K. Chapter 433. Spirituality. The key to refining Tao soldiers is not refining technology but spirituality. In general, spirituality can only be created through the world by a creator monk. The world monster devours living beings in order to absorb the spirituality of living beings. It is really a luxury to cultivate Taoist soldiers with spirituality. Qin Daoxian muttered. No wonder there are no Taoist soldiers in Wangxinghai, the entire Wangxinghai, or even the entire northwestern border of Jianghu, which force can show the spirituality. This thing can only be created by a creator monk. The cultivator's Tao realm can reach the creation realm, at least in the late stage of the primordial spirit, and some are even directly transcending the robbery. A monk of this level, not to mention Wangxinghai, looks at the northwest frontier of Xianyun continent, and there is not a single faction that owns it. Thousand Machines Hall claims to be proficient in puppet art, but in front of Tao soldiers, what kind of puppet is this? Qin Daoxian shook his head. Qin Daoxian was not unacquainted with the product of puppet refining. But it was because he had seen it before that he understood the rigidity of puppets. This kind of artifact creation was fine for attacking dead objects such as Xianqing and Lingshan. It is impossible to play a role in the battle of monks. Especially the battle between high-level monks. After the monks reached the nascent soul stage, many of them understood the laws of space and mastered the technique of teleportation. Not to mention how strong the cultivator who has mastered teleportation is, the mobility is far from what a puppet can match. Even if the cultivator exaggerated the attack power of the puppet, it would still be nothing if he couldn't hit the enemy. But the soldiers are different. Because in essence, Tao soldiers should be regarded as an alternative creature. The difference between them and the human race monks is that they are not viviparous, but the human race monks use their spirituality to instill creation such as puppets. Creation. Qin Daoxian raised his head, although he is still far from the realm of creation. This does not prevent him from having some knowledge of this realm. Suddenly thought of something. Qin Daoxian's thoughts moved. This treasure pavilion has a great origin, I wonder if they have the spirituality to sell it? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian's heart suddenly became hot. High-level puppets are nothing to monks, but Tao soldiers formed by high-level puppets are quite different. It's like the fairy Nishang that Qin Daoxian saw in Chuanbao Pavilion. If the other party hadn't taken the initiative to speak up, Qin Daoxian would not have found out that the other party was not a human being, but a Taoist soldier. From this, it can be seen that once a high-level puppet is turned into a Taoist soldier, it has the strength of a monk of the same level. The more he thought about it, the more fiery Qin Daoxian's heart became. What does Wangxinghai lack? Lack of powerhouses. Lack of powerhouses in the primordial spirit stage and even the transcending tribulation stage. If Wangxinghai now has several Yuanshan Daijins in charge, they will be able to sweep across the northwestern border of Jianghu in an instant. What Xianqing Dao League, Spirit Insect Valley, Qinji Temple. All are not a problem. No matter how these sects are combined vertically and horizontally, in the face of absolute strength, they will not be able to turn any waves. Although there is an order from Tianzuan City, there should be no more large-scale infighting between the sects of the Phoenix Meteor realm. But as the saying goes, there are policies above and countermeasures below. Do not let the war infighting, and secretly control some second-rate forces for the first-rate forces. Is that a problem? For example, Wuji Xianmen now wants to secretly control Ganruan Liluan. What resistance can Ganruan Liluan have? The other party carefully sent a few Yuanshan Daojun to come, and he could easily control all the high-level officials of Ganruan Liluan. The high levels are all under control. Do you still need a large-scale invasion? Ruan Liluan continued to check the contents of the jade slip. The more he looked, the more excited the expression on Aoki Ding's face became. Take a puppet against a cultivator. A first-order puppet can match a chi-refining cultivator, a second-order puppet can match a foundation-building cultivator. The fourth-order puppet can match the Jindan stage, and the fifth-order puppet can match the nascent soul. While the sixth-order... Aoki Ding raised his head. It's the primordial spirit stage. The sixth-order puppet, in terms of value, is above the special sixth-order magic weapon. And this is not the key. The key point is that it takes a lot of spirituality to turn a sixth-order puppet into a Taoist soldier. This is the bulk of the cost. Aoki Ding suddenly woke up when he saw this. No wonder only the strength of Du Jie Tianzuan can be called a top power. Not to mention Tianzuan Du Jie's own extremely powerful strength. Just relying on his ability to enlighten Taoist soldiers, it is difficult for other forces to match. Suddenly, Qingwu Ding thought of Wuji Xianmen again. The outside world has been rumored that in addition to the absence of Tianzuan, Wuji Xianmen is not inferior to the top forces of Liangjiyuan in terms of strength. From this point of view, there must be a creation realm cultivator in Wuji Xianmen, and there may be more than one. This moment. Only then did Aoki Ding really catch a glimpse of the weakness of Wuji Xianmen. Although Wuji Xianmen is also a first-class force, the first-class force and the first-class force are obviously different. A world-level first-level Taoist power can barely be called a first-class power. But can this first-class force be comparable to Wuji Xianmen? This first-class force, after the Jiang family and Gan Wan Xinghai unite, are not afraid of it, let alone Wuji Xianmen. In the eyes of Wuji Xianmen, this first-class force is no different from the second and third-tier sect families, and it is an existence that can be crushed at will. Gourd Cave Days. Aoki Ding's mind immediately became active. The plan to go to Liangjiyuan has been completely cancelled by him. The reason why he went to Liangjiyuan was to find an alchemist who could refine Xingyuan pill, but now that Yunzhou can solve this problem, Qingwu Ding naturally doesn't have to go far. In addition, Qingwu Ding always felt that the cultivator named Yuan Jianzong who was in the mysterious realm of Shanshui with him was calculating something against him. The other party took out the heavenly secret talisman and gave it to him, absolutely no good intentions. The only thing Ruan Liluan can be sure of now is that the other party needs to go to Liangjiyuan, and it is not so difficult for the other party to go to Liangjiyuan. Not only as the other party said, the lack of the cost of the space teleportation array. Could it be said? New doctrine. In Ruan Lilan's mind, this force suddenly emerged. Sini religion is the confidant of Wuji immortal sect. Although Wuji immortal sect's power is much stronger than this Sini religion, it is not as good as Sini religion, which is hidden in the dark and destroys Wuji immortal sect from time to time. Just like Huahua Ruan Liluan, who was the real god of the past. That makes sense, Aoki Ding nodded. Only people from Sini sect can't ride the space teleportation array controlled by Wuji Xianmen. The other party found me. Firstly, they used me to leave the capital of Su Kingdom, and secondly, it was also for my heavenly secret talisman. That said, there must be a core component of the heavenly secret talisman in the opponent's hand, which can sense other heavenly secret talismans. That's why he was so reckless and directly handed the heavenly secret talisman into my hands. In an instant, Ruan Lilan's thoughts were opened, and he guessed Ruan Lilan's origin. The only thing he was more puzzled about was that Yuan Jianzong's courage was so great that a mere mid-level cultivator of the Purple Mansion dared to plot against him, a Yuanine cultivator. Even if there is a new doctrine standing behind Yuan Jianzong, the cultivation base of Yuan Jianzong in the middle of Zifu is solid. Isn't the other party afraid that his hands will kill him? If Aoki Ding sees money and kills Yuan Jianzong, even if the Sini religion behind the opponent retaliates against Aoki Ding afterwards, it will be meaningless to Yuan Jianzong himself. Because he took his life into it. The new doctrine is really a bunch of lunatics. Aoki Ding shook his head. Ruan Liluan believed that he had always had a lot of courage, but he really didn't have the guts to ask him to count Yuanying Xinjuan when he was in the Zifu period, and he was a second-level Yuanying Xinjuan like him. However, Aoki Ding didn't care about Yuan Jianzong's affairs. Anyway, he has already made up his mind not to go to Liangjiyuan this time. Even if the other party has more conspiracies and tricks, when the time comes to take the space teleportation array, Qingwu Ding will leave directly. Is the other party going to Liangjiyuan or not? Even if the other party temporarily changes his mind and does not go to Liangjiyuan, Aoki Ding has a way to force the other party to leave. Aoki Ding is most concerned about whether Chuanyuan's Hao can buy spirituality. If you can buy spirituality, what is the specific price? However, regardless of whether Chuan Yunzhou sold spiritually or not, the currency that the other party settled with was definitely not a spirit stone, but most likely it was the power of good fortune. Because the power of creation, such a treasure, can not only help cultivators advance to the level of spiritual objects such as magic weapons, but also help cultivators advance to the realm of the world. This is a treasure that has a huge effect on the primordial spirit stage and even the monks in the transcending tribulation stage. After the monk broke through the world and opened up his own world, if you want to be promoted to the world, you must meet two conditions. One is to continue to improve the laws of the Tao in the world. This belongs to enlightenment. Although there are some auxiliary methods, it depends more on the understanding of monks. The second condition is to irrigate the world with the power of creation, expand the scope of the world and strengthen the power of the world. In this regard, the world opened up by the human monks is very similar to the origin of the world demon. The same is true of the source world of the world demon. After the expansion reaches a certain level, the Tao law must be improved in order to continue to expand, otherwise the world will be safe from collapse. The Tao law and the scope of the world complement each other. Either of the two has shortcomings and neither can improve the level of the world. Many monks have no ability to earn the power of creation to expand the world after reaching the third level of the world, so they can only resort to stupid methods. From the endless void, draw a trace of the power of creation. Although this method does not consume any resources, it will consume a lot of cultivators' time. Although Yuanshin Daojun has a long lifespan, if he spends all his time absorbing the power of creation from the endless void, his path will basically come to an end. Therefore there is a saying that the higher the cultivator's cultivation, the greater the demand for resources. The treasure pavilion can stand in the two worlds for hundreds of thousands of years, not only relying on the Jiang family's Tianzuan, but the treasure pavilion relies more on the merits of Wu Mingxiu left by the ancestors of the treasure pavilion. It is precisely by Wu Mingxia's continuous supply of the power of good fortune for the treasure pavilion that the treasure pavilion has its current heyday. Ruan Liluan is now, like a man with a key to a vault, coming to a city with abundant supplies. He wanted to use the money in the vault to buy these materials, but found that he couldn't get the money in the vault for the time being. With this sense of anxiety, the tormented Aoki Ding is doing the right thing. He glanced at the 5 statues of Ruan Liluan in front of him and thought for a while. This time he brought the spirit stone of a large spirit mine. The spirit stones of this large spirit mine are all earned by the Jiang family's business over the years. Actually, the amount of spirit stones the Jiang family has earned over the years is far more than a single spirit mine. How many? The patriarch Ruan Liluan is not too vague, he only knows that the Jiang family is definitely not short of spirit stones. For a large-scale spiritual stone mine, according to the standard, the reserves must be more than 1 billion tons. A standard spirit stone weighs about 500 grams. In other words, if all the spirit stones of a large spirit stone mine were mined, there would be at least 2 trillion or more. In Qindaoshin there are many forces that can control a large spiritual mine, but all of them have extremely hard backgrounds. 2 trillion spiritual stones, if Wu Mingxiu refined it into the power of good fortune, a total of 200,000 drops of the power of good fortune could be extracted. 200,000 drops of the power of creation, this is a terrifying wealth. The primordial spirit Daojun on the 5th floor of the special world may not be able to come up with so much wealth. And Aoki Ding can have this terrifying wealth as long as it is refined by Wu Mingxiu. However, according to the rate at which the 5 statues of Wu Mingxiu can refine 1,825 drops of the power of good fortune in 1 year, it would take more than 100 years for Qingmu Ding to refine all the spiritual stones in the gourd cave into the power of good fortune. For more than 100 years, it may be nothing to other nascent soul monks. But you must know that Aoki Ding has not had so much time to practice so far, and he must not wait. Besides, with the development of the real demon world by Jiang's family and Qianwan Xinghai, and their control of the northwestern border of the Xianxian family, it is unknown how many spirit stone mines Qingmu Ding will control in the future. It took him more than 100 years to refine a large spiritual stone mine. How about 100? What about 1,000? And what about giant spirit stone mines that have more reserves than large spirit stone mines? Therefore, Qingmu Ding must produce more Wu Mingxiu. Regarding Ruan Lilan's production method, Qingmu Ding already had a plan in mind, that is, to build a Wu Mingxiu production line to industrialize Ruan Liluan. If it weren't for the magical machine tool that Qin Daochu and the others developed, Aoki Ding would not have this idea in the short term. Instead, he would choose to find a group of reliable Tier 4 item refiners and slowly refine Wu Mingxiu. But the problem is that the 4th order refiner is rare, and secondly, the more people who master Wu Mingxius refining method, the more Wu Mingxius refining method will be exposed. This is no small thing. A few people have mastered the method of Wu Ming's cultivation system, and Qingmu Ding can still control it if he asks himself. But a large number of fourth-order refiners have mastered, and there are many variables. Once the Jiang family and Gan Ruanlilan's mastery of Ruanlilan's refining method are exposed, Baoge will never let them go. At that time, not only the treasure pavilion, but other first-class forces and even top-level forces will all come to you. That is really the enemy of the world. The fact that Treasure Pavilion can master Ruanlilan's refining method does not mean that other forces can also master it, which involves the issue of strength. If the strength is not enough, it is guilt. Therefore, for the manufacture of Wu Mingxiu, Qingmu Ding does not tend to have a large number of refiners to refine it, but prefers to use the machine tool to produce it. However, building a fourth-order magic tool production line is also a big challenge for Qingmu Ding. 7017K. Chapter 434. The family's magic tool machine tool has only reached the second generation, and there are still 2 generations before the fourth-order magic tool can be mass-produced. Qin Daoxian said silently. Fortunately, he has a lot of comprehension stardust at this moment. In the past, the comprehension stardust was limited, and Qin Daoxian did not dare to invest too much comprehension stardust in creating magical tools more. He uses the preaching function to let the people from the Family Magic Weapon Research Institute develop various magic tools instead of him. The advantage of doing this is that it has cultivated a large number of magical instrument research talents for the family. Second, it also saved a lot of comprehension stardust for Qin Daoxian himself. After so many years, the Qin family has developed many new types of magic tools, from various melting furnaces to machine tools. If Qin Daoxian is all alone, I don't know how much comprehension and stardust it would take to do it. However, the system of the Institute of Magical Instruments created by Qin Daoxian perfectly solved this problem. After all, Qin Daoxian is very clear about the truth that one person is short-sighted. In addition, with the development of the Qin family, there will definitely be more and more demand for various new types of magic tools. This is obviously not realistic. Therefore, the Dharma Instrument Research Institute system came into being. But now, facing the various treasures of the Chuanbao Pavilion, Qin Daoxian can't wait for the research of the Qin Family Magical Instrument Research Institute. Because Qin Daoxian had asked the Qin family's Magical Instrument Research Institute and the Qinyuan Jianzong's Item Refining Hall to merge and reorganize before departure, it should be the chaotic period of the 2 running in. Qin Daoxian estimated that it was hard to say whether they could exert much R&D capability. In addition, he can't always preach for the people of the Magical Instrument Research Institute, and their research efficiency will inevitably be further reduced. For various reasons, Qin Daoxian decided to go into battle himself. Speaking of which, this should be the second time that Qin Daoxian wanted to develop a new magic weapon so urgently after he developed the Rongling furnace. The fourth-order magical machine tool used to produce the Qingmu Ding is also at least fourth order. Think of this. Qin Daoxian first took out a jade slip and read it carefully. The jade slip in his hand recorded all the contents of the second-order magic tool machine tool developed by the Qin Family Magic Tool Research Institute. This includes not only the refining method of the second-order magic tool machine tool, but also the research and development ideas for developing it. Research and development ideas are what Qin Daoxian values more. Because he had to follow this line of thinking, and further develop third-order or even fourth-order magical machine tools in one fell swoop. Qin Daoxian's item refiner rank is only the 4th rank, which is not too high. However, the rank of his array master is as high as the 6th rank, so looking at the various array methods recorded in this jade slip, it is like a college student looking at the mathematics knowledge of elementary and junior high school. It is very easy. After about 3 or 4 hours, Qin Daoxian finally read Qin Daoqi's idea of the development of the machine tool. His first reaction after reading this jade slip was that Qin Daoqiu and the others had developed a machine tool for instruments. Compared with when he developed the Rongling furnace, their thinking was more mature and stable. Qin Daoxian developed the Rongling furnace back then. As for Qin Daoqi's research and development of the machine tool, they used the exclusion method to choose a research direction and then try it regularly. If we exhaust all methods and find that this research direction cannot work, we will switch to another research direction. According to Qin Daoqi's method to develop a new type of instrument, the result is that this kind of instrument can be successfully developed. The only difference is how much time and cost it takes. If they did not hesitate to pay the price, in theory, there would be no magic weapon that they could not develop. After reading the real record of Qin Daoqi's development of the machine tool, Qin Daoxian was greatly inspired. I didn't expect that the Qin family has come so far in the research of magical instruments over the years. Qin Daoxian sighed. He is not the only one who is making progress in this world, and the people of the Qin family are also making progress. Although the speed of their progress may be slower than that of Qin Daoxian, the Qin family has never given up progress, which is the most commendable. If it were a child of another family, after seeing that the family was so strong, they would have long since stopped making progress and become extravagant all day long. The Qin family members, from cultivators to ordinary mortals, have no such thoughts. It can be seen that the Qin family has been extremely successful in family education. It is not in vain for Qin Daoxian to elevate family education to a strategic position as important as the family population. Gourd Cave Days. Qin Daoxian sat cross-legged, and in the sea of knowledge, the huge stars of understanding slowly rotated. With each rotation of the comprehension star, countless comprehension stardust is consumed. Qin Daoxian's comprehension also began to skyrocket. 10 times, 20 times, 30 times, 100 times. With 100 times more comprehension, his thinking is unprecedentedly clear, and inspiration continues to flow to him like an ocean tide. You can choose this direction. Qin Daoxian suddenly seized the inspiration in his mind, and chose a similar research direction following the original research and development idea of the second-order machine tool. In the Tanzhong cave, a mass of pure black flames floated out. A large amount of spiritual ore floated in front of this pure black flame, and the impurities were easily refined by it, leaving only clumps of spiritual liquid. It is much more convenient to use the fire of the devil to refine tools than the general spirit fire secret technique. Qin Daoxian said with a smile. Although there is no melting furnace, Qin Daoxian's refining effect has soared nearly 10 times due to the refining of this demonic fire. In a blink of an eye, a month has passed. I saw a huge machine tool appearing in front of Qin Daoxian. Judging from its aura, the magic tool machine in front of Qin Daoxian is a 4th-order high-grade magic tool. It's done. After a month of trying, 100 times the blessing of comprehension, and the foundation Qin Daochu and the others laid, Qin Daoxian finally refined this 4th-generation machine tool. Although there is only one magic machine but only one of it, the refining efficiency is enough to be comparable to dozens of 4th-order refining masters. Generally speaking, it will take at least a few years for a 4th-order refiner to refine a greenwood cauldron. And with this 4th-order magic tool machine, it only takes a month at most to produce a greenwood cauldron. I have the fire of the devil. At my speed, it takes only a few days to refine a 4th-order magic tool machine tool, but the magic tool machine tool also needs someone to operate. Suddenly, Qin Daoxian flashed, "Let Dao soldiers operate? However, will this be too extravagant?" Although I don't know the value of a bit of spirituality, Qin Daoxian felt that the things that can be created by monks in the creation realm cannot be cheap. However, with the spiritual stones I'm carrying now, I probably need more than 500 greenwood cauldrons, and I can finish refining them within a year. A 4th-order magic tool machine can produce 1 greenwood cauldron a month. I need to refine 50 within a year, and I can use these 50 magic tool machines to produce 600 greenwood cauldrons within a year. After a simple calculation, Qin Daoxian found that the plan was completely feasible. 3 years was enough for him to refine all the spirit stones. Not only that, Qin Daoxian even had about a year of free time to improve his cultivation. As for the operation of the machine tool, Qin Daoxian also figured it out, and he personally operated it for the time being. It is very convenient to operate the machine tool to produce Aoki Ding, even mortals can do it. With his cultivation base he can operate 50 machine tools at the same time, but it is a piece of cake. It is too extravagant to use the Dao soldiers to operate the machine tool, and Qin Daoxian does not consider this aspect for the time being. Think about everything. Qin Daoxian implemented it according to his ideas. Time passed slowly. During this period, Qin Daoxian went out again and purchased a large amount of spiritual ore for refining the machine tool. Fortunately, he prepared enough spirit ore for refining the Qingmu cauldron, not to mention refining more than 500 statues, even refining 1,000 statues, 10,000 statues, more than enough. 1 year later. Gourd Cave Days. The last 4th-order magic tool machine was slowly taking shape in his hands. Qin Daoxian was surrounded by huge metal beasts. Since there was no spiritual line network of the Qin family, the machine tools in front of him were powered by spiritual stones and arrays. 50 finally completed. Even with Qin Daoxian's cultivation level, the machine tool that has been refining for a year without rest and sleep consumes a lot of money. Fortunately, 50 machine tools were finally refined within the budget time. The next step is to use these 50 machine tools to produce Qingmu Ding. Chen Daoxian lined up 50 machine tools and combined them with the fourth-order Rongling furnace he carried to form a greenwood tripod production line. In the end, 50 greenwood tripod production lines were completed under the installation of Chen Daoxian. Looking at the rudimentary Aoki Ding production line in front of him compared to the Chen family's instrument factory, Chen Daoxian let out a sigh of relief and said slowly, "Let's start." Under his distraction, 50 production lines were running at full power, producing Aoki Ding. A month later, 50 bluewood cauldrons were produced, and Chen Daoxian put enough spirit stones into the 50 bluewood cauldrons, so he ignored them and continued to produce other bluewood cauldrons. 1 year later, a total of 600 green wooden cauldrons are placed in the gourd cave heaven. Not only that, this year the Aoki Ding, which was first produced, has already refined nearly half of the spirit stone he carried. His left hand trembled slightly and caressed the storage ring on the index finger of his right hand, because it contained more than 100,000 drops of the power of creation. This is the most terrifying wealth that Chen Daoxian has mastered since his cultivation. Chen Daoxian is not going to intervene in the remaining spirit stone refining. There is a small space inside the Aoki cauldron, which holds all his remaining spiritual stones. When the 600 cyanwood cauldrons have finished refining these spiritual stones, he will gain more than 100,000 drops of the power of creation. A total of 200,000 drops of the power of creation. Although Chen Daoxian didn't know how much spirituality these 200,000 drops of the power of good fortune could buy, he knew that the money he bought for the intelligence of the heavenly secret talisman was enough. Think of this. Chen Daoxian didn't delay, and flew out directly from the gourd cave. Immediately after putting away the gourd, his body flashed and flew out of the mysterious realm of Shenshui. In the side hall, sensing that Chen Daoxian was leaving again, Wu Mingxiu opened his eyes slightly, and then slowly closed them again. Chuanbao Pavilion. Chen Daoxian came here for the third time. The last time I came here, I wanted to buy some spiritual ore for refining the fourth-order magic tool machine tool. Although these spiritual ores are tier 4, buying some tier 4 spiritual ores with Chen Daoxian's cultivation base is considered shabby. There's nothing to be noticed at all. Although the things he wants to buy next will attract the attention of those who are interested. Once these things are successfully purchased, the strength of Chen Daoxian will skyrocket. Don't worry about anyone else following him stepping into the Chuanbao Pavilion. The one who greeted him was still the fairy in Nishang. Friend Chen. When Fairy Nishang saw Chen Daoxian, she took the initiative to greet her. "I'm going to tell my friend, the Xing Yuan Dan you want to refine will become a pill in a few days." Hearing this good news, Chen Daoxian's face was overjoyed. "Thank you, Fairy. Fellow Daoist Chen, don't be polite, I should thank you for taking care of my Chuanbao Pavilion's business." The two were polite. Chen Daoxian continued, "I am here this time, and I am going to ask your pavilion for information on the purchase of the heavenly secret talisman." Hearing this, Nishang Fairy's pretty face flashed a hint of surprise. "Daoyu Chen, is this ready for the power of good fortune? Our Chuanbao Pavilion does not accept the use of spirit stones to deduct the power of good fortune." Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. "This is nature. 10,000 drops of the power of good fortune, not to mention the real monarch of the world realm, is an ordinary cultivator of the Yuanshan stage, and it seems quite difficult to come up with such a large amount of the power of good fortune. Don't you see that when Qin Zhan took out all his old hands, he only took out 2,300 drops of the power of creation? Although Yuanshan Daojun is richer than Qin Zhan, it is not an easy thing to take out 10,000 drops of the power of creation at one time. Enough to make many Yuanshan Daojun go bankrupt." Seeing that Chen Daoxian was not lying, the expression on Fairy Nishang's pretty face suddenly became enthusiastic. "Fellow Daoist Chen, please wait and I'll get the information on the heavenly secret talisman for fellow Daoist." "It is good." Chen Daoxian nodded. Fairy Nishang asked Chen Daoxian to sit in the hall and wait, and she didn't know where to go to get things. Compared with Fenglai Inn, Chuanbao Pavilion is full of crisis. It seems that everywhere, there is a terrifying spiritual warning from Chen Daoxian. Here, Chen Daoxian does not dare to be presumptuous, let alone use his spiritual sense to investigate, and even his eyes do not dare to glance. Chen Daoxian entered the Chuanbao Pavilion several times, and although he didn't see anyone, he was unable to handle the enormous pressure it brought him. He dared to be 100% sure that there were not only primordial spirit Daijins here, but there were far more than one. About a stick of incense. Fairy Nishang returned with the fairy cloud. Young Daoist Chen has been waiting for a long time. As soon as she entered the hall, Fairy Nishang apologized like Chen Daoxian. The fairy is serious. Qin Daoxian cupped his hands and then changed the conversation. I don't know the intelligence of the heavenly secret talisman. Qin Daoyu, let's see. I saw Fairy Nishang raised her hand and took out a metal box that was as black as ink. Qin Daoxuan's spiritual sense probed it, but it disappeared like mud into the river. This is made of extraterritorial meteorite iron, which can absorb the spiritual consciousness of monks, and its material is comparable to the 7th grade spiritual mine, which is extremely hard. Say it. Fairy Nishang pinched the spiritual art, the metal box slowly opened, and a jade slip lay quietly in the jade box. Seeing this jade slip, Qin Daoxian slowly stretched out his hand and took it out of the metal box. There are indeed restrictions. Qin Daoxian raised his head. I want this jade slip. It is good. The fairy in neon clothes smiles like a flower. After pondering for a while, Qin Daoxian continued, I wonder if fairy has spirituality for sale here? Spirituality? Fairy Nishang frowned. Fellow Taoist wants to buy spirituality? Spirituality is not cheap. I don't know if you bought it for refining Taoist soldiers or... Qin Daoxian did not hide it and said bluntly, it is for the purpose of enlightening the Taoist soldiers, for the purpose of protecting the Tao on the battlefield outside the territory. Hear this. Fairy Nishang guessed that Qin Daoxuan's identity must be the nephew and nephew of a big brother. Otherwise, with the cultivation base of the other party's world realm true monarch, it is impossible to come up with so much power of creation. Thinking of this, Fairy Nishang said with a smile, if fellow Taoists are just for Taoist soldiers, there is no need to buy spirituality because it's really not worth it. Oh, what did the fairy mean? 7017K. Chapter 435. Taoist friends can buy Taoist soldiers eliminated from the battlefield outside the 2 realms. Hear this. Qin Daoxian was slightly taken aback. Second hand? Does this despise him for not having money? Seeing that Qin Daoxian did not speak, Fairy Nishang knew that he must have misunderstood and quickly explained, fellow Taoist, don't think that these Tao soldiers were eliminated from the battlefield outside the territory, but they have been regrouped by my Chuanbao pavilion, and their strength is not weaker than before. How many? What's more, it is stronger than the new Taoist combination. Hearing these words, Qin Daoxuan's face relaxed slightly. Although most of the preachers are made of puppets, their spirituality is comparable to that of monks, but even monks have their strengths and weaknesses. For example, some monks are good at attacking, some are good at escaping, and some are good at defense. The same is true of Tao soldiers. In order to maximize the role of Tao soldiers in protecting Tao, many children of major forces often choose not one, but a complete team when choosing Tao soldiers. The Tao soldiers in this complete team have auxiliary defenses, those responsible for trapping the enemy, and those responsible for attacking and escaping. If it is said that the strength of the 6th-rank low-rank Taoist soldiers is comparable to that of the Yuanshan Taoist on the 1st and 2nd floors of the world realm, the team composed of a pair of 6th-rank low-rank Taoist soldiers can be compared with the Yuanshan Taoist on the 3rd layer of the world realm. You must know that there is a huge gap in strength between the 2nd layer of the world and the 3rd layer of the world. If the two are in a normal battle, within 10 rounds the 2nd layer Daojun of the world will be defeated. However, the Taoist team was able to compete with the Taoist on the 3rd layer of the world realm with a weaker level of strength. It can be seen that its ability to cooperate in combat is far superior to that of the human race cultivator. Qin Daoxian understood this information from the jade slips presented by Fairy Nishang. He is even more aware that the reason why the Taoist team can exert the strength of 1 + 1 is greater than 2 is due to the combination of formations constructed by the monks when they are attuned to the Taoist soldiers. Every Taoist soldier in the team is equivalent to a formation base of the formation. In theory, this array can be superimposed infinitely. In other words, the more soldiers there are, the stronger the strength will be. Compared with the human race monks, there is no problem of lack of close cooperation between the Taoist soldiers, because in essence they belong to the puppet life. The level of rigor is just like the intelligent robot of the previous life. For this kind of existence, the superposition array method is simply tailor-made for them. But this kind of Taoist squad also has a downside, that is, once one of the Taoist soldiers is destroyed, the formation of the entire Taoist squad will collapse. Even the remaining Tao soldiers still have strong strength, but they cannot fight beyond the ranks. Qin Daoxian knew the doorway here, so he was a little dissatisfied when he heard that Fairy Nishang was going to sell him second-hand goods. What he wants is the soldiers who can really sit in the family and the Qianyuan sword sect, not the eliminated goods on the battlefield. Seeing the non-committal expression on Qin Daoxuan's face, Fairy Nishang struck while the iron was hot and said, "Fellow Taoist," and later, talking. Fairy Nishang disappeared in the hall again. Less than a stick of incense. Behind Fairy Nishang, a Taoist team consisting of 5 Taoist soldiers followed and strode into the hall. Compared with Fairy Nishang, these 5 Taoist soldiers were much more taciturn. Since entering the hall, there has been no sound. But Qin Daoxian knew that they were no different from the Fairy Nishang standing in front of them. They were all puppet lives with intelligence. Just because it is life, Tao soldiers like human monks also have emotions, joys and sorrows. Only. The moment they were turned into Taoist soldiers, the orders of loyalty to their masters were implanted deep in their consciousness. It's like the soul seal that Qin Daoxian cast on the demons. Inside the hall, Fairy Nishang smiled and said, "Fellow Taoist, look, these are the Taoist soldiers gathered from the battlefield outside the territory of my Chuanbao pavilion, and then rebuilt by the Master of Refining. I dare not say that they are better than all Taoist squads of the same rank, but they are by no means weaker than the average level of Taoist squads of the same tier." Heard? Qin Daoxian stepped forward and looked at the soldiers in front of him one by one. This Taoist squad is a defensive Taoist squad. Because in the team only one Taoist soldier is responsible for the attack, but 2 are responsible for the defense. The remaining 2 Taoist soldiers, one is responsible for using the domain to suppress the enemy, and the other is responsible for taking everyone to escape at critical moments. Compared with the ordinary 4-person Taoist team, this Taoist team has one more. Perhaps it was the master craftsman of Chuanbao Pavilion who discovered the inadequacy when rebuilding the formation of the Taoist team, so he added a Taoist soldier and turned the 4-person Taoist team into a 5-person Taoist team. These are all 6th-order low-grade Taoist soldiers? Certainly. Fairy Nishang said with a smile, "We have Chuanbao Pavilion of 6th rank, middle rank and even 6th rank high rank Taoist soldiers, but they are not eliminated from the battlefield outside the territory, so the price." Qin Daoxian nodded. "What's the price of this Taoist team?" Fairy Nishang stretched out 3 fingers, 300,000 drops of the power of creation. Cough cough. As soon as Qin Daoxian took a sip of Ling Cha, he coughed violently. He raised his head in disbelief and frowned. "How much? 300,000? When Qin Daoxian heard the words, he got up and wanted to leave. Seeing this, Fairy Nishang hurried forward and said, "Fellow Taoist Qin, don't be angry, you haven't got your medicinal pill yet." Saying that, Fairy Nishang showed a look of grievance. Qin Daoxian has no interest in acting like a puppet. He said solemnly, "The brand new Taoist team composed of 4 Taoist soldiers is only sold for 400,000 drops of the power of creation. And you Taoist soldiers were all eliminated from the battlefield outside the territory. The strength is not as good as the 4-person Taoist team, and the potential is far less. In the future, if my strength improves and I want to continue to add Taoist soldiers to the Taoist team, it will be more difficult to stack formations than a 4-person Taoist team. All kinds of flaws, you are actually cheap by 100,000 drops of the power of creation, just when I am collecting the rubbish." Hear Qin Daoxian's words. Fairy Nishang secretly regretted that she had given the Taoist information and refining method to the other party for free. Otherwise, Qin Daoxian would never have understood the flaws of Tao soldiers so clearly. Seeing that Fairy Nishang didn't speak, Qin Daoxian knew that he was on the point, and he was even more certain in his heart. The value of these 5 Taoist soldiers was definitely not worth 300,000 drops of the power of good fortune. Although the Chuanbao Pavilion family has a great business, it is the nature of all businessmen to sell goods at a premium to obtain more profits, and Chuanbao Pavilion is no exception. After pondering for a while, Fairy Nishang said sternly, "It seems that fellow Taoist Qin carefully looked at the Taoist refining method presented by my pavilion. Yes, the price of 300,000 drops of the power of creation is indeed a bit high. However, this eliminated Taoist squad is hard to come by. The price is lower than that of the brand new Taoist squad, and the strength is almost the same. The only disadvantage may be that the potential is less. But it is absolutely suitable for the current Taoist friend to protect the Tao. The Taoist squad in front of him is enough to exert the strength of the 3rd-layer Taoist in the world. It is more than enough to protect the current Qin Daoxian. 200,000 drops of the power of creation." Qin Daoxian stretched out 2 fingers. 20,000? Fairy Nishang frowned. Qin Daoxian cut off 1/3 of the price of this Taoist team at once, which can be said to be quite ruthless. Compared with the brand new 4-person Taoist squad, the price is only half. 5 Taoist soldiers, if they spend spiritual enlightenment, they need to spend a full 50 points of spirituality, and their value has reached 500,000 drops of the power of creation. From the spiritual point of view of consumption, these Tao soldiers can't even recover the cost. But the reality is so cruel. The damaged Taoist team is like a damaged magic weapon. Even if it is re-repaired, the price is definitely far less than the new one. A long time. Fairy Nishang nodded with difficulty. Okay, 200,000 drops of the power of good fortune are 200,000 drops. But fellow Daoist Chen has to pay all the power of good fortune at one time. It's natural, Chen Daoxian nodded, but the power of 200,000 drops is too much. I need to go back and prepare. No problem. Fairy Nishang readily agreed. The two negotiated this big deal, and the relationship instantly became much closer. Although Fairy Nishang is also a Taoist soldier, she was trained to be a Taoist soldier responsible for selling goods, which is very different from the Taoist team responsible for protecting Taoism. The negotiation is over. Fairy Nishang invited, fellow Daoist Chen, please come with me. Your Saint Yuan Dan will be refined in the next few days. Please also ask fellow Taoists to check it out in person. Good to say. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands, followed behind Fairy Nishang, and flew towards a spiritual mountain in the cave. In the spirit veins, a verdant mountain peaked in the blink of an eye. The two descended towards the peak of the mountain. On top of the mountain, an old man with white hair and beard was sitting cross-legged on the top of the mountain. In front of him, an alchemy furnace was spinning non-stop. Chen Daoxuan's consciousness swept away. Then I saw that inside the alchemy furnace, a group of orange-red flames was slowly roasting 5 groups of elixir liquid. Chen Daoxian recognized at a glance that this orange-red flame was exactly the secret method of spiritual fire, which is common among Yuan Ing cultivators' infant fire. This is Master Nye. Fairy Nishang pointed at the white-haired old man and introduced, Master Nye is a top-grade alchemist of the 5th rank, and it is more than enough to refine Saint Yuan pill. Although Chen Daoxian is not very proficient in alchemy, but he discerned from the aura on the 5 spiritual pills in the alchemy furnace, 3 of the 5 spiritual pills were 4th order Saint Yuan Dan, and 2 were 5th order Saint Yuan Dan. The 4th order Xin Yuan Dan is mainly used to improve the cultivation of Jindan cultivators. The 5th order Saint Yuan Dan is an excellent treasure for improving the cultivation of Yuan Ing cultivators. What Chen Daoxian needs are these 2 5th order Saint Yuan Dan. It's just a pity that there are only 2 5th order Saint Yuan Dan. Although the white-haired old man didn't talk to him when Fairy Nishang introduced him, he couldn't help but say Chen Daoxuan's dull expression. This 5th order Saint Yuan fruit you send is probably not stored for thousands of years. You are lucky enough to meet the old man, otherwise if you switch to another alchemist, I am afraid you can only make a 5th order Saint Yuan Dan for you. Hear this explanation. Chen Daoxian finally felt better. He knew in his heart that what the old man surnamed Nye said was true. This 5th order Saint Yuan fruit was the reward obtained by the Qinyuan sword sect when he raised his sect to help Liang Jiyuan. After all, isn't it thousands of years old? Elder Nye is tired. Chen Daoxian bowed his hands. Hearing this, the elder surnamed Nie's face relaxed, turned to look at Fairy Nishang and said, Miss Qi, after finishing this potion, the credit I have saved is enough for me to exchange for a drop of Tianhua Yulu? Hearing this, Fairy Nishang said, Old Nye, please wait, I'll check first. After all, she took out a disc-shaped magic weapon and quickly checked it. Soon, Fairy Nishang raised her head and said with a smile, Old Nye, the credit you have accumulated over the years is enough to exchange for a drop of Tianhua Yulu. It seems that I, Xian Yunzu, need another primordial spirit Daojun. Hear this. The body of the old man surnamed Nye couldn't help trembling slightly. Obviously he was extremely excited. Chen Daoxian could see that although the old man surnamed Nye in front of him had reached the peak of nascent soul, his lifespan was running out. Otherwise he wouldn't have this white beard and hair. The monk's cultivation base has reached the nascent soul stage, and unless he is deliberately disguised as an old man, his appearance will be very young. If any nascent soul cultivator has the image of an old man, it can only prove that his life essence is running out. From the Yuanyin period to the Yuanshan period. Not only does it need to meet the Tao realm and physical strength, but also the spiritual soul of the monk must be completely transformed. The old man surnamed Nye in front of him, the Tao realm and the physical body all meet the conditions for breaking through the primordial spirit stage. The only thing the opponent lacks is the soul. Tianhua Yulu. Chuanbao Pavilion actually even has this kind of treasure. Chen Daoxian secretly said. Like Tai Shinshui, Tianhua Yulu is also a treasure for tempering the soul. The cultivator of the Yuanyin period has it, and the grasp of breaking through to the Yuanshan period is even 3 points larger than Tai Shinshui. That is to say, as long as the cultivator is not too stupid to add to it, he can basically be successfully promoted from the nascent soul stage to the nascent soul stage. That's what resources do. At this moment, Qin Daoxian also secretly moved. Since there is Tianhua Yulu in Chuanbao Pavilion, can he buy it? After all, Chuanbao Pavilion claims to sell even immortal artifacts. No matter how precious Tianhua Yulu is, it can't be compared to the pure yang immortal artifact, right? Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian couldn't help but feel hot in his heart. His current cultivation base has been promoted to the early stage of nascent soul, and after taking 2 5th order Saint Yuan Dan, his cultivation base will probably be promoted to the peak of nascent soul. And the rest, only the physical body and the soul are left behind. The flesh is easy to say, there is the fire of the devil, the big deal is to use the resources. Anyway, Qin Daoxian has already formulated a plan to open up the real demon world. Once this plan is successfully implemented, he will have no shortage of body refining resources. In addition to the physical body pass, only the soul pass is left. Logically, Shen Shengwen should not exist for Qin Daoxian. Because he has a mysterious method of refining Shenhai chapter. Unfortunately, the cultivation of Shenhai chapter requires time accumulation. And Qin Daoxian practice so far, it didn't take much time at all. One can imagine how his Shenhai Pian practiced. Since refining the mysterious method cannot help him break through the customs of God in a short time, he can only use resources to smash it. Qin Daoxian is quite familiar with this method. Just as his thoughts were turning, the old man surnamed Nye shouted loudly, "The medicine pill is almost ready, pay attention to receiving the medicine pill." "It is good." Qin Daoxian nodded. 7017K. Chapter 436. Ni's old words just finished. I saw 5 spiritual pills soaring into the sky. These 5 spiritual pills were 3 blue and 2 red, and they were 3 4th order Saint Yuan pills and 2 5th order Saint Yuan pills. Seeing this, Qin Daoxian did not dare to neglect. He quickly waved his hand to set up a space barrier to prevent Ling Dan from escaping. The 5 spiritual pills slammed into the space barrier, as if they had hit the cotton wool. They were soft and unforced and were bounced back. Seeing this scene, Qin Daoxian looked happy. It's just right. I saw him take out an empty jade bottle from the storage ring, and put the 5 elixir flying towards him into it one by one. Aside. Fairy Nishang saw Qin Daoxian put away the elixir and congratulated him. Congratulations to fellow Daoist Chen for harvesting the Xinyuan pill, the cultivation base will soar just around the corner. Qin Daoxian hurriedly bowed his hands to return the salute, and his joy was beyond words. Xian Boro's auspicious words. Old Nye didn't care about being polite to Qin Daoxian, he just said lightly, "Don't forget my Tianhua Yulu." Then he rode the light, left the peak of Lingshan and flew towards his cave. Watching old Nye leave, Qin Daoxian thought for a while, then tentatively said, "Dare to ask Fairy, is the Tianhua Yulu from your pavilion for sale?" "Of course it's for sale, but Tianhua Yulu is a treasure of refining gods, and the price is extremely high. Taoist friends must be mentally prepared. Dare to ask its price." Fairy Nishang stretched out a finger. 100,000 drops of the power of creation can buy 1 drop of Tianhua Yulu. Hiss! Qin Daoxian took a deep breath when he heard the words. He bought a 5-person Taoist team equivalent to the 3rd layer Taoist in the world, but only spent 200,000 drops of the power of creation. Buying a drop of Tianhua Yulu would cost 100,000 drops of the power of creation. No wonder the second-rate forces on the border of Xianyun continent didn't go to Chuanbao Pavilion to buy the treasure of refining God. On the one hand, even if they have the supreme treasure of refining gods, they are not sure that they can break through to the primordial spirit stage. On the other hand, this supreme treasure of refining gods is really too expensive. Not to mention Xinyuan Jianzong and other second-rate sects, even the current Qin Daoxian does not have the extra power of good fortune to buy it. But, although Qin Daoxian doesn't have enough power of good fortune now, for him who has mastered the production line of Qingmu Ding, the power of good fortune will be as much as possible in the future. Even Qin Daoxuan's difficulty in obtaining the power of creation is lower than that of the Jiang family. Because the Jiang family's Qingmu cauldron had to be refined bit by a 4th-order craftsman. According to a 4th-order refiner, it takes 3 years to refine a greenwood cauldron. A 4th-order alchemist of the Jindan stage, even if he does nothing in his life and uses it all to refine the greenwood cauldron, he can only refine less than 200 pieces. Although the Jiang family has a big business, how many 4th-order refiners can they have? Even if the Jiang family has tens of thousands of fourth-order refiners, how much of the greenwood cauldron can they have? Because the Aoki Ding has a limited lifespan. The greenwood cauldron refined by the fourth-order refiner cannot be preserved for hundreds of thousands of years of immortality like the green wooden cauldron refined by the ancestors of the Jiang family. The Qingmu cauldron refined by Jiang Laozu can maintain immortality for hundreds of thousands of years. That is because he is a true immortal, and the power he masters is not the magic power of ordinary monks, but a higher level of immortal power. Treasures infected with immortal power have a touch of immortality and immortality themselves, and they can naturally be preserved for hundreds of thousands of years of immortality. The most typical example is the Pure Yang Immortal Artifact. There are not many Pure Yang Fairy artifacts in the Phoenix Meteor realm, but apart from those damaged in battle, Qin Daoxian has never heard of any Pure Yang Fairy artifacts that decayed because of time. After walking out of the Chuanbao Pavilion, Qin Daoxian, who returned with a full load, immediately returned to the mysterious realm of Xianshui and went into seclusion. Before closing, Qin Daoxian was still cautiously setting up a Jiugong array around him to prevent others from snooping. Xianshui's secret realm side hall. Wu Xiaoming sat cross-legged, but his consciousness was communicating with the Yuanshan Taoist in the Dongtian magic tool he was carrying. Master, he's back. Don't use your spiritual sense to probe, the formation he laid out is no trivial matter, don't make him alert. A cold voice sounded in Wu Xiaoming's sea of consciousness. Yes, sect master. Wu Xiaoming lowered his head, but, my subordinates think that the other party may have suspected me. It doesn't matter, this fellow Taoist must be going to Liangjiyuan. When that time comes, we'll have a long-term plan. That's all there is to it. Wu Xiaoming nodded. The main hall of the mysterious realm of Xianshui. Qin Daoxian knew nothing about Wu Xiaoming's plan. The thing he cares most about now is to quickly take the Xing Yuandan to raise his cultivation base to the peak of Yuaning. Even Qin Daoxian was considering whether to give up buying that Taoist team and choose to buy a drop of Tianhua Yulu to try to break through the Yuanshan period. But thinking that his physical body has not yet reached the level of condensed and indestructible real body, Qin Daoxian can only give up. Breaking through the physical condition of the Yuanshan stage is the easiest condition for other Yuaning true monarchs, but it is the most difficult one for Qin Daoxian. Because the immortal body he wants to condense is no trivial matter, but the real body of Zhu Rong. Although his condensed real body of Zhu Rong is indistinguishable from the legendary demon Zhu Rong, this gate is the real body of the demon gods, originally created by imitating the 12 demon gods. Even if he cultivated to the extreme, he could not be comparable to the 12 demon gods, but at least he could get a glimpse of the demon god spirit. Forget it, it's still according to the plan, first by the Dao soldier squad, and wait until the family has gathered enough fortune power, and then make a long-term plan. Although Qin Daoxian carried a lot of spirit stones, compared with the spirit stone mines mastered by the Qin family, especially Qinyuan Jianzong, it was not known by how much. When he has refined all the spirit stone mines in the Qinyuan Jianzong territory, he will not know how many treasures he can buy from the Chuanbao Pavilion. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian was full of excitement. Sure enough, there are still plenty of resources and treasures in the big place. Unlike a small place like Wanxinghai, which seems to have abundant resources, there are actually only a handful of resources that can help high-level cultivators to cultivate. Shaking his head, Qin Daoxian didn't think too much. Immediately he took out a jade bottle from the storage ring, and it was the medicine bottle that he received the Xingyuan pill in the Chuanbao Pavilion. Without saying a word, Qin Daoxian opened the jade bottle directly. The mana was slightly stimulated and 5 Saint Yuan Dan filed out. Qin Daoxian glanced at the Cyan 4th Order Saint Yuan Dan, and finally focused his eyes on the 2 5th Order Saint Yuan Dan. The 4th Order Saint Yuan Dan has a miraculous effect on improving the cultivation of Jindan cultivators, but for him the effect is not so obvious. If he took it, it would be a bit of a waste. Thinking of this, Qin Daoxian put 3 4th Order Saint Yuan pills into the jade bottle, paused, and put back a red 5th Order Saint Yuan pill. This time there was only one red 5th Order Saint Yuan pill left in front of Qin Daoxian. Qin Daoxian calmed his heart, picked up the 5th Order Saint Yuan Dan, raised his head and took it down. Saint Yuan Dan melts at the entrance. Qin Daoxian only felt that he was submerged by a torrent of spiritual energy, and countless spiritual energy formed a column of spiritual energy above his head. Qin Daoxian's whole person was bathed in a pillar of spiritual energy. Fortunately, he was in the Huladongshan at the moment, and there were still 9 palaces guarding the outside world, so there was no movement. But for Qin Daoxian himself, the change this aura light beam brought to his cultivation was too great. Qin Daoxuan's original first-level cultivation in the nascent soul stage, under the bath of this aura light beam, visibly skyrocketed. The first floor of Yuanying, the second floor of Yuanying, the third floor of Yuanying. In less than a month, Qin Daoxian even crossed 2 small realms and broke through to the third floor of nascent soul, and he was only 1 step away from reaching the middle stage of nascent soul. And now, the aura beam of light still enveloped him. His cultivation continued to improve. Although the cultivation base has improved rapidly, due to Qin Daoxuan's terrifying Avenue realm, the rapid improvement of the cultivation base did not cause any instability to his foundation. On the contrary, the third floor of nascent soul is still too low compared to Qin Daoxuan's Dao realm. With his great Dao realm, even if he breaks through to the primordial spirit stage now, it will not cause him any unstable foundation. Half a month later, Qin Daoxuan's cultivation finally broke through to the middle stage of nascent soul, reaching the 4th level of nascent soul. Seeing this, Qin Daoxuan's face was overjoyed, and what surprised him even more was that his cultivation was still improving, and the aura light beam brought by Xing Yuandan had not disappeared. In Dantian, the originally calm mana, like a tsunami at the moment, continues to soar. The quality of mana is also constantly improving. Qin Daoxuan's nascent soul sat upright in the purple mansion, and his height continued to increase with the improvement of his cultivation. 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. Until the middle stage of nascent soul breakthrough, nascent soul sitting in the purple mansion, the 3-inch nascent soul suddenly sucked. The sea of mana outside the purple mansion was sucked into the stomach like a whale. But the strange thing is that Yuanying is only 3 inches tall, but it has absorbed so much high-quality mana without the slightest bloating. The only difference is that as the nascent soul absorbed the mana, the nascent soul, which was originally 3 inches tall, soared by 1 inch again, reaching 4 inches before it stopped. But nascent soul's height stopped growing, and the sea of mana outside Zifu did not stop skyrocketing. That's it. The aura light beam lasted for 3 months. Qin Daoxuan's cultivation level, from the 1st level of nascent soul, to the 6th level of nascent soul, reached the peak of the middle stage of Yuanying, and he was only 1 step away from breaking through to the later stage of Yuanying. This rocket seems to be able to cultivate the speed, and the monks of Wanxinghai have never heard of it. In fact, even the disciples of the Taiyin sect who mastered the Xingyuan fruit tree would not dare to use the Xingyuan pill to improve their cultivation as recklessly as Qin Daoxian. Because the improvement of the monk's cultivation is not enough to simply accumulate mana, it also requires the monk's soul, body and the realm of the avenue, all of which meet the corresponding conditions. Blindly raising the qi cultivation base blindly, the final result is only to go crazy. Qin Daoxuan's current physical cultivation has reached the threshold of condensing the indestructible real body, and he is only 1 step away from condensing Zhu Rong's real body. At this level of physical strength, even if he raises his qi cultivation base to the 9th level of nascent soul, he will not have any burden. As for the soul, Qin Daoxian is not too strong. However, due to cultivating the Xinhai chapter, Qin Daoxian broke through the sea of consciousness in the nascent soul stage, and his consciousness and soul had skyrocketed several times, which was comparable to that of ordinary monks in the later stage of nascent soul. Therefore, his qi-refining cultivation base has risen to the 9th level of nascent soul, and his spiritual consciousness will not hold him back, and as his cultivation base skyrockets, his spiritual consciousness will also increase to a certain extent. As for the last item, it is also the one that restricts the monks the most, the Dao realm. On the contrary, it is the part that Qin Daoxian is best at. Therefore, with his foundation, even if he breaks through to the peak of nascent soul, there is no problem. This is also the reason why Fei Qinxue hopes that Qin Daoxian will use Xing Yuandan to raise his cultivation base to the peak of Yuanying as soon as possible. Because she knew that she could do it with Qin Daoxuan's foundation. As another cultivator, Fei Qinxue would never have such an unrealistic idea. Gourd Cave Days. In 3 months, the cultivation base will be raised to the peak of the middle stage of nascent soul. Qin Daoxian didn't stop, he worked hard and wanted to directly raise his cultivation base to the peak of nascent soul. I saw that he took out a red Saint Yuandan from the storage ring again and swallowed it. Next moment, the aura light beam enveloped him again. Half-year later, when Qin Daoxian walked out of the Hulu cave, his cultivation base had already reached the 9th level of nascent soul. The only pity is that his mana has not been completely polished and reached the peak of nascent soul. But for Qin Daoxian, these are just some minor details. As long as he returns to Wanxinghai, he will spend a little time polishing it. Besides, his body and soul have not yet broken through. Even if he has raised his cultivation base to the peak of nascent soul, he will not be able to break through the primordial spirit stage and become the much-anticipated Yuanshin Daojun in Wanxinghai. Simply, Qin Daoxian no longer insisted but chose to exit. Just as he was about to put away the 9-palace array, Qin Daoxian seemed to think of something, and hurriedly displayed the awakening of insects and cicadas. The secret technique of restraining the breath was displayed, and Qin Daoxuan's breath could be seen to decline with the naked eye. The 9th floor of Yuanying, the 8th floor of Yuanying, the 7th floor of Yuanying. In the end, Qin Daoxuan's cultivation level dropped to the 4th floor of Nascent Soul, and he finally stopped. In the middle of Nascent Soul's cultivation base, it is not very conspicuous in this capital of Su Kingdom. See. Only then did Qin Daoxian put away the Jiogong formation with satisfaction. Next, Qin Daoxian still has 2 things to do. The first thing, of course, was to buy back the Taoist team he had reserved in Chuanbao Pavilion. Judging from the information presented to him by Chuanbao Pavilion, the strength of the Taoist soldiers is not weaker than that of ordinary Yuanshan period monks. And the team composed of Dao soldiers, its strength is able to fight beyond the ranks, and it is extremely ferocious. After buying this Taoist team, Qin Daoxian will have another trump card in his hand. The Stars Kendo chart and Jiogong Shuji formation are indeed strong enough for ordinary nascent soul cultivators, and they are more than enough as trump cards. But as Qin Daoxuan's strength and status continue to improve, the enemies he will face in the future will also become stronger and stronger. Sooner or later he will meet Yuanshin Daojun. At that time there are not many cards on the body, but it is extremely dangerous. As for the second thing, it was his promise to Wu Mingxiu in the side hall, to send the other party to Liangjiuan. Qin Daoxian didn't care whether Wu Mingxiu belonged to the Sini religion or not, but since he took over the heavenly secret talisman Wu Mingxiu gave him and promised him, he would definitely do it. Now he would like to see what kind of expression Wu Mingxiu would have if he knew that he would not go to Liangjiuan at the critical moment. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.